playing with toys, like grabbing them.
Oh,
Before she would
nice.
just like look at them, and now she's actually interacting with them.
Yeah. How old is she?
3 months.
Yeah,
Oh
3
my
months, right at
gosh.
that
Just got
Yeah.
squishy jelly bean age.
No, but thankfully she's doing well thus far.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Certainly a present for us right now.
Yeah, she just took a nap. So she took her 3rd nap of the day, so she's in a good mood right now.
I feel that she's only slightly less callow than I am.
But yeah, no,
Oh, we know it's not
So
until
you're-
9 o'clock that your eyes begin to glaze over. Yeah.
no, but I wanted to introduce her to you
Oh,
guys.
thank you.
Thank you, thanks for
Oh,
being
she's
here.
so sweet.
So you're surviving?
Yeah, yeah. I
Used
was
to it.
the first month. Was
Yeah.
you remember I came by and I was telling you,
You're
like,
like, whoa.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hi.
it takes a little getting used to. First time parents, they really don't understand it.
yeah, for sure. Like, and the
Yeah.
first,
It's hard. The way it was explained to me is you sleep when the baby sleeps.
Yeah, that doesn't always work.
yeah, and the maid and the butler takes care of the dishes.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yes.
But no, thankfully my mother-in-law was there.
trouble.
Oh, yeah.
I had
So yeah, you had some help, you had
Yeah.
visitors.
Yeah, thankfully
Right,
my
yeah.
my mother-in-law was there for the first like month and a half.
Oh,
around
that's
there.
good. So then you could sleep, yeah.
Yeah, she
The
took care of
onesies
from
are cute,
5 a.m.
too.
to 10 a.m.
You know,
She would
like
take
the
over
clothes.
shows.
These onesies for 50-year-old guys.
In my childbirth
I like the
situations,
cotton.
I learned
The cotton
buy
baby
pajamas,
clothes.
Yeah.
7 pairs.
Yeah.
Stay in pajamas
Yeah.
24/7, and you won't have to go anywhere
Mhm.
or do anything, you'll be in pajamas.
So are you trying to,
No, not tonight, but I wanted to, so far she had.
Yeah, the baby's gonna come in.
7 o'clock, folks?
Yeah.
I-
My-
The February 26th meeting of the Durham Planning Board shall come to order. Let's see, roll call. We're going to start with Rob.
Robert Sullivan.
Heather Grant?
Sally Tobias?
Paul Rasmussen.
Michael Barron, Town Planner. M. Friedrichs and Richard Kelly cannot make it, and Erica Nauman will not be here either.
Peyton McManus.
Gary Whittington.
All right, so you said Richard can't make it, isn't going to be here either. So Heather, you're our council rep tonight. And we're running on 6 voting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, we're running on 6 tonight. Okay. Approval of the agenda. So item 8, are we doing that one? Are we going into?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, we're going to start that one and then just
Continue. We should
continue it.
right.
Okay. Yeah, anybody have any adjustments for the agenda?
No.
No? All right. Town planners report?
The Conservation Commission is working on the wetland and shoreland overlay district, overhauling that. And they're almost done, so hopefully you'll have that maybe in 2 months. Hopefully. And that's it.
All right. Very good. Reports from board members who serve on other committees.
No. Me? Town council?
Town council?
Okay, so the town council met on the 17th, and you guys probably know all this already, but we approved the zoning definitions update that we worked on for so long. And the Durham Historical Overlay Districts thing on the benches and all of that was also approved, as well as the student rental adjustments that we made to that, going from 3 to 4 unrelated, and all of the other discussions we've had on that since we've had a public hearing on that previously. Plus, they voted on a resolution to oppose Bill 457, which is also still pushing around with the housing items and trying to figure out different ways of helping resolve housing, but it's a little bit warped. I'm talking about sort of losing local control of the housing density, and they had a lot in there, no discrimination against familiar relationships and all kinds of other things in it, but in general, they were pushing for allowing 2 per bedroom, no matter what the total per dwelling unit would be. So I'm not sure, that's still kind of up in the air at the Concord level. I haven't heard anything in the last week or so, but I know there was also Todd Selleck and others were up also giving public comments on that particular Bill 457. And I think that was the major bullet points. I think our next meeting's on the 3rd. I think it's the same day as the Housing Task Force in the morning, so in the afternoon. That's it. Unless anybody, you were there the whole time.
No, I ran out for the roundtable.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would too. That's it.
All right, anyone else? You want to do Housing Task Force?
Yeah, I can do Housing Task Force, even though you are the representative. Housing Task Force, we're meeting a second time this month so that we can work on miscellaneous, we're calling them miscellaneous zoning adjustments that will pertain to Durham et al. We had a committee that looked at downtown zoning to try to increase density options down there to create some more housing, hopefully downtown. That subcommittee met and we came up with some ideas about how to change density and some different ideas. And did you present that to, you presented that to this group, didn't you? Or explained about the CB1, CB2?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did that under other business.
Yeah, so at the last planning board, you were kind of given a tweak on that, or a blurb on that. And so I'll be presenting that to the council on the 3rd, the downtown zoning adjustments. Our goal is that since the town council came to the Housing Task Force and asked us to specifically look at downtown zoning for housing, we did that and we created some changes that we think are going to be helpful. And our idea is to present that to the council, and the council can then take it upon themselves to initiate it to the planning board. So that will free up the Housing Task Force to continue with our other zoning across Durham, the rest of Durham, and get that presented, and then we'll bring that to the planning board when that's ready. So that's that.
Thank you. All right. Public comments? No. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Beth Olshansky.
All right. Is her hand up?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. We'll move on to item 8 then. Public hearing, proposed amendment to the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, Section 175-6 of the zoning ordinance. A, remove requirement to connect with town sewer, since it's not available in most of the district. B, make single-family residences exempt from the requirement to connect to an underground stormwater system. All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? I don't have anyone here. Is anyone on Zoom would like to speak?
Is Beth Olshansky here to speak on this item?
She might just be watching. So, Mr. Barrett, while we wait for the public to decide if they want us to share their thoughts, you said something about the Conservation Commission wanted time to review.
So this was presented to the commission on Monday night, and you know, they understand the constraints here with sewer, and they, you know, appreciate that with single family, there's no other situation where a single family property owner would be required to put in an underground system. But they were hoping they could explore it a little more to see if there's some middle ground, some way to mitigate the impacts. They looked at Exeter's aquifer overlay, for example, which has some other language that might be good. So they asked that the board, you know, hold your public hearing, but continue it 4 weeks to March 26th. They're meeting on the 24th to give them an opportunity to look at this some more and provide comments.
I think Beth wants to talk.
All right, thank you. Beth?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, great, thank you. I thought I'd just share a little background since I live in one of those aquifer protection districts. And I looked at the map recently. I mean, there's about just under 40 different parcels, lots, in our particular aquifer protection district out on Packers Falls Road. Of those lots, about 4 of them are conserved, and then the rest, except for 2 lots, are built on. And back in around 2000, 2001, there was quite a to-do when the, just prior to the Allen Farm subdivision being presented and eventually being approved by the town council, the planning board and the town council were well aware that that future development was in the aquifer protection district, and they approved it in any way, much to the chagrin of our neighbors. So it's now almost 22, 23 years that there's been 16 new homes, I believe it is, that were built there. The only 2 remaining lots that are either not developed and not conserved are one of the house lots in the Allen Farm subdivision, which was like 3/4 wetlands. And then the other lot is next door beside my house. I co-own that meadow with my neighbors, David and Joyce Williams, and my husband and I are in the process of donating that meadow to the conservation, not the conservation, the Nature Conservancy, which owns abutting land behind that meadow. This came up initially a couple months ago when I was looking into the value of that particular parcel, the meadow that we wanted to donate, and in looking at the Aquifer Protection District, just noticed that really it was the only undeveloped lot. It had previously been valued as a non-developable piece of land, but every other parcel in that Aquifer Protection District has been developed, or as I said, I think there's 4 of them that have been conserved. So when I spoke to Michael, he was the one that pointed out there's a little bit of inconsistency between what our ordinance actually says and the behavior of the town over many years in improving all these parcels for development. We are at the far end of Durham, so there is no water or sewer, town water or sewer out here. So that's just a little bit of background as to how this came up. Our donation is moving forward, so it doesn't matter to me what you end up doing, but I thought I would just share a little information about why this is before you.
Thank you. All right, any questions for Beth? No, all right, then let's continue this to the meeting of March 26th. Item 9. Another public hearing for the proposed amendment to the Office Research District for front setback. Reduce the front setback in the table of dimensions from 50 feet to 30 feet for minor and collector streets in the OR district. This will not change the setback for Dover Road or Route 108. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Do we have anyone new in Zoom?
No.
No. All right, thank you. All right. Shall we close the public hearing?
I'd say so, sure.
All right.
Seeing there's no one here.
Seeing there's no one here who wishes to speak, all right, we'll close the public hearing. So, shall we, let's see. Would someone like to, so, discussion? We're all familiar with this one, right? I think everybody was here when we talked about it, putting it together. Shall we initiate it?
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, and just in case nobody's ever followed it, we're just changing the setback.
This affects one street in town.
One street in town on Stone Quarry Drive. It doesn't affect Route 108.
Correct.
And it's only Stone Quarry Drive.
All right, so I'll need a motion to initiate the amendment.
I so move
Moved
to
by-
initiate the amendment.
okay, thank you. Do I have
I second that.
Seconded by Rich. And it was Gary who moved it.
By Rob.
It's okay.
Seconded by Rob.
It was seconded by Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gary made the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0, thank you. Item 10, Stratford Regional Planning Commission. Presentation about the SRPC from Mike Learman, Durham representative on the commission.
These are the annual reports from the SRPC. I know Mike has probably seen this a few times. There's 6 of these. If Michael just abstains, maybe not around. I have 7 of these, which is a little, sort of a recap of some of the information I'm going to talk about in case you...
So we're passing around the annual report for the SRPC.
So my name is Mike Learman. I've been on the SRPC, the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, for I think about 8 months now. And I've been on the Energy Committee for a few years. So that was my sort of town connections here. The purpose of the evening is twofold, really. One is just sort of give an overview for those of you who may not be familiar with the workings of the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. And secondly, after doing that, to see if there might be other interested parties in perhaps joining the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. And I guess just want to start with, are there people here that are pretty familiar with it and kind of feel like, yeah, I know all about it and don't really need any more information? You're okay?
I could always.
Sally knows about it.
I know about it, but I always, I'm an
Paul knows now too, and Michael
Yeah.
certainly.
And I only know about certain pieces of it, like maybe the transportation and certain areas I know more about than others.
Okay.
So I would love an overview.
Okay. If everybody says, oh, yeah, we all, it's like, great, I'll leave.
There's a lot of people out there that would like to hear.
Okay, so it is a multifunction entity. The Stratford Regional Planning Commission is one of 9 regional planning commissions in the state. And these are created by a state law that was passed in 1969. They kind of conform with the county lines, but not really. There's a lot of towns that are in or out. There's 18 towns in the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. I think there's 3 or 4 that are not part of Stratford County per se. And the North Country is kind of a whole big thing that takes in a couple of counties really. Physically, the offices are based in Rochester. And each of the regional planning commissions have somewhat slightly different roles in terms of what their functions are, because some of them serve as double or triple duty. I mentioned there's 18 towns in the Stratford Regional Planning Commission, and Durham is like the southern end of it. It goes all the way up to the town just short of the lake, basically. Towns appoint commissioners, and there are between 2 and 4 commissioners from each town based upon population. So all towns have 2. If you're over 10,000 population, you get 3, which is what Durham's situation is, and over 25,000, you get 4. So Dover has 4 people. Governance-wise, there's the commissioners elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary treasurer. And then there are 4 other commissioners that get nominated and elected to form the executive committee with the officers. And the executive committee is basically responsible for the financial, the budget, reviewing and overseeing the executive director, and setting some of the bigger strategy issues. I've been on the executive committee now for 2 months. I was an alternate when I first joined because they were looking for alternates. I said, okay, I'll do it. And basically, it's probably 80% of their function is budget and finance related, looking at issues with that. So the funding sources for the Regional Planning Commission are multiple. There's a small municipal fee that the towns each pay into that, and that makes up a fairly small part of the overall budget. And then the rest of it is either federal or state grants for different functions, private grants, which they can pursue, and also they provide contract service to towns for different things. So a lot of the smaller towns in Stratford County to the north of here, they don't have a dedicated planner that's an expert in planning, like a part-time person maybe, and some have none. So a lot of the functions that might take place in a town like this get contracted out, and the SRPC actually provides that function with some of their staff people that go to meetings like this. And they get paid for that, obviously, on a contract basis. They also do project work. So town wants to undertake a bigger project, housing task force, for say, and they don't have enough people in town to pull it together and do it. They might contract a service like that and say, okay, they want the staff. Roles of the regional planning commissions do vary, as I mentioned earlier, somewhat, because some of them, I think there's 4 or 5, are designated as the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Metropolitan planning organizations are a federally created entity, which is basically serves as a link between the federal grants that go down to the state for various transportation improvement projects. I'm sure you're all probably familiar with the state's 10-year plan for improvements. All the little amendments and changes that take place with those things and the prioritization type things, the Regional Planning Commission gets a little say in and sort of votes and supports that along with the rest of the process. And the Stratford Regional Planning Commission is, in fact, a metropolitan planning organization. So sometimes at the meetings, the regional planning function's sort of done, and then the hats change, and it becomes the metropolitan planning organization for part of the meeting. And that function is, that gets more involved in technical stuff. There's one of the members of the Stratford Regional Planning staff who is quite knowledgeable on this, and he's very heavily involved in it, so there's a lot of expertise that exists there. And they also have a huge database of information, which I'll mention again later. Some of the regional planning commissions also serve as an economic development district. So there's 3 economic development districts in the state. One is in the North Country, which is a huge number of towns. Rockingham makes up one, and Stratford does. So the Stratford Regional Planning Commission also serves as the economic development district entity. Again, this is a federally mandated, federally created structure, and that's the 3rd role that the Stratford Regional Planning Commission serves or functions as. In fact, right now they're right in the process of reviewing the regional economic development plan for the future, and there will be stuff coming out to the towns shortly. I think there's a little survey just went out recently, and that's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 month venture, I think, before they get the thing finalized. And in terms of those roles, just a little bit more about what they do. So in the Metropolitan Planning Organization role, the input is particularly on the state transportation plan. And the 10-year plan particularly, any project that's local, they get input on. If there's regional impact, they will oftentimes work with the adjoining regional planning commission like Rockingham if there's something happening, say, in the Spalding Turnpike that's going to go from Portsmouth up to Dover or something like that. The two will work together on those types of things. Evaluating competitive grant requests and making recommendations to the state is part of that process. The third role, besides the economic development and the metropolitan planning, is just serving as a regional planning entity. And in those cases, they review developments of regional impact. So you've been talking about the West End project that UNH is looking at. If that gets designated, which I think it may already be as a regional impact, not yet? Okay, it's probably, if it does, this is an example, then they are the entity that would review that for the affected towns. They also develop resources for towns. So town wants to overhaul their zoning, which we've been talking about. That might get contracted out also in some of the smaller towns, or if you just need an additional resource for that. Technical assistance to towns for various special projects. They're involved also with environmental planning projects. They do a lot of work with New Hampshire DES and grants from New Hampshire DES. The shoreland improvements that were made in the park here, that was something that the SRPC was involved with slightly with the town. And they're also heavily involved now with a project. Partly, UNH is into it, and the federal government onto it, is trying to set up and establish new data gathering mechanisms on water elevations and water rises so that can be monitored in a more dynamic model than what they have currently for Great Bay. So looking to the future in terms of what it will take to mitigate for potential flooding and sea level rise. The information now is described as like a bathtub model. So you put so much water in it and it's going to rise evenly, whatever. But obviously there's tides involved and things don't always go that way. And you've got river flow based upon how much it rains in each region. So trying to create a more dynamic model. And that's a grant that they got to do that. The last thing I just want to mention with regards to the regional planning is the data resource. They have GIS people. They have a data analyst. These people, from my impression of just, the meetings I've been going to, are quite knowledgeable, and there's a huge resource of information. A lot of it's pretty easy you can kind of skim through the website and you can find a lot of it. Some of it's a little more difficult to find if you don't know where you're looking, but the staff are great. So if you're ever looking for a resource and say, geez, maybe they've got information that we're interested in, just give them a call, and they're more than happy to try and steer you exactly where, or just send it to you, basically. But it is a wealth of information. There's profiles on each town. There's demographics. It's how much land is under conservation. They've got demographics in terms of the school age kids and how many kids in each school. All kinds of stuff from different sources that are sort of put together, so you can compare things easily if you want that as information. And finally, in terms of the commissioners' roles, now Paul signed up and he's about to become sworn in, I guess, at the next meeting. If anybody else is interested. The commissioners' roles, basically representing the community on issues. You get to put your opinion in, ideas. There's discussion at the meetings on which direction or which things should be prioritized. It's a great opportunity to network with other towns. And I would think as planning board members particularly, in terms of what's happening in other towns, how do people approach things, it could be a great resource that way in terms of the networking piece. There's members of zoning boards. There's a couple of planning board members. There's a couple of town selectmen, I believe. The public works director from Somersworth's on it. So there's a whole different mix of people from the Stratford region that are there to sort of be your resources. Like I said, the access to the staff and the data is great. It's not a big lift in terms of the amount of time involved with this. They meet monthly. Meetings are very well run. It's a very professionally run organization, in my opinion, and I've been around a few different things. The meetings move along. Quarterly, they do an educational piece, and throughout the year, there may be other orientation type education functions for new members. So it's a pretty well organized entity, and that's kind of the quick overview of it. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Yes, sir.
Thank you that was excellent. It was the first time I realized they actually had data and they have GIS resources there. Are people on staff full-time that can, that work with data and work with
Data-
GIS?
Yes.
Because when I looked at the maps are across the entire, region, and they include the town. So all of a sudden, you can look at town of Durham zoning, and then right next door, you can look at town of Dover zoning.
Right.
And I've always just been looking at one town, and all of a sudden, wow, I can look at, and I can see an aquifer that's expanding across multiple towns in their GIS. So that regional view of that data is really fascinating. I had no idea it was available, really.
It is pretty remarkable. And they've put a lot of different things together for different grants or projects they've worked on. So there's like a library of reports that have already been generated on various subject matter. I mean, they did a project last year. It was largely done by the time I got there, for looking at watershed resources in some of the northern towns, the river that runs through it. And so they pulled together all kinds of information for those towns. And yeah, it's a pretty rich source of information.
And is it also possible, like you mentioned it, but if we had a request for something and we said, okay, is it possible to do an overlay of something, or could you do something, we could contact those folks?
I'm not sure I can answer this part exactly for you. Michael probably can. Some of the stuff is free. It's like, geez, you got a map for this? Can you give me up a GIS map that will contain this information, whatever? They'll probably generate that for you and just send it to you, no big deal. It's actually more of a project where there's a lot of time involved in doing something. Then they might ask for a fee or a contract if it was a bigger thing. But a lot of the stuff, they'll just pull it together for you.
It's and I remember there was I think it was Colin Lintz, or
Yes.
he was transportation.
Yes, yep.
And that was pretty interesting to see what they were working on in terms of transportation that would cross towns and designs that would cross towns and things like that.
And they actually do, traffic flows. They've got all kinds of traffic flow information there, but they also actually have the gadgets for doing traffic flow, pedestrian flow. You wonder how many pedestrians are going across this bridge or whatever. You can get that information. They'll actually, under contract, I think they want to get paid for that, but they'll set it up and they'll do it. So they can do some of the physical studies themselves. And Colin is quite the guru on that subject.
And then I think then they put their MPO hat on, and then they apply for the federal grants on behalf of towns and
Right.
behalf of the
Yep.
communities within there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great resource.
Yeah, and one of the things that came up at their meeting last week was there's some Department of Transportation money going out to the local communities for various projects. And, our Madbury Streets one was one that was submitted for that. And part of the process is the state asked the regional commissions to do a scoring. And that's what they settled on, what the rules were going to be for scoring the various projects. Was it 2 or 3 projects?
Three.
3 projects in the region that are competing. I don't know at the state level whether the money is dialed out by region or just by state, but the part that the commission is going to have is going to represent 20% of the state's rating with regards to, the decision.
So obviously,
process.
Paul and I will be very objective and
Obviously.
They did,
That's-
Stratford Regional did the town's 2015 master plan. And then the 2017 piece of it, which was about a dozen chapters. And they did a terrific job. They were just great. And the price was very reasonable.
Yeah, they probably should charge more, quite honestly, from a finance point of view. I'm there, Paul
Will be there.
And so there'll be one more seat available.
Oh,
if anybody's
And
interested.
here it's got Wayne going.
Right, Wayne was when I joined, but when he got elected to the legislature, he bowed out from
Oh,
the
that's right.
commission.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So you're short one person.
Yep.
Short one person at the moment, so.
Yeah.
I don't know if the council plans on filling it with one of their people or whether they're just looking for someone from the community, but. The discussions are very, very planning board related, I will say that. But they're at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock on a Friday morning.
True.
Oh, the meetings are?
But attendable by Zoom.
Yep. Yeah, and there's several people that do that regularly. In fact, there's a couple people I've not seen in person yet, but
But if you go in person, it's free coffee, maybe?
Yeah, it's coffee and a donut. But
And then just one more. Is there any concept of like a clearinghouse or a directory or some sort of resource of useful language that certain towns have either put up or the Regional Planning Commission would find would be helpful to sort of go, not downstream, but get shifted into zoning in the different towns? In other words, are there like best practice zoning and best practice language that they kind of look at that maybe if one was looking for that, they could look at the Regional Planning Commission and say, oh, I'd like to borrow that?
yeah, I'm trying to think if I can tell you definitively on a zoning. There probably is at some point. But I mean, one thing, we recently submitted a proposed EV ordinance, and the Energy Committee was working that. And I found one from Southern Maine Regional Planning Commission had a model, and Stratford Regional Planning Commission had a model also. So we kind of like picked a couple things out of each of those as putting it together. So they do have a lot of different resources. And like I said, some of it's fairly easy to find on the website, but some of it you've got to dig a little bit. So that's why I say it's a phone call is, you know, an easy way to get the information.
Yeah, I didn't really realize the scope and the breadth of what they offer, and it's a tremendous resource.
And I think that's the takeaway, is that there's an awful lot of data and information that they've amassed and categorized and is there, that if you're doing something and you know, curious, you can look on the website, see if you can find it, and if not, you know, give them a call. Definitely on the housing topic, it's on the housing task force. I mean, you know that, I'm sure, so.
So anybody from the public is welcome to, would be welcome to join as a commissioner. No experience is necessary, just an interest in planning issues. And if anyone's watching, just call the planning office and we can give you lots of information. And Mike, so the meetings are, it's once a month on a Friday?
Yeah,
Friday
the
morning?
executive committee meets at 8, the commission itself meets at 9, usually out of there by 11-ish. And then so there's quarterly meetings that take place. In fact, you had the notice on the one from the Barrington tomorrow. It was in the Friday report, I think. So, okay. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Yes,
And if
thanks.
you have any questions, Michael knows how to get a hold of me, so I can try to answer anything better. Thank you.
Thanks for representing us.
And Eric also has, are you the chair of the Energy Committee? Are you the chair of the Energy,
No.
the Durham Energy, but
No.
you're on the Durham Energy Committee?
Yeah.
So, and I understand the Energy Committee is likely going to be bringing forward an ordinance about electric vehicle chargers in the near future?
Right, so we sent that to you, and you've got that for your input, and the fire chief, police chief, and a bunch of other entities in the town too, so I think you saw the reminder note they sent last week, so. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us on to item 11, site plan regulations, invasive species. Review of a proposal from the Durham Conservation Commission to amend the site plan regulations regarding the list of prohibited invasive species. So this is a pretty light change from my reading. Anybody have thoughts on it, or shall we just move it on to a public hearing? We don't have anyone that's going to present anything?
No, the commission, I told them that I could answer any questions, so they didn't need to come. Plus, Richard is on the commission, but he could not make it tonight.
Right, so it appears that it's simply a couple of grammatical corrections and a rewrite of the invasive species paragraph to clarify exactly where what list to be using for both allowed and prohibited species.
And then the appendix in the landscaping section, there's other items in there too. There's recommended plants for screening, there's shade trees, there's shade shrubbery. So one of those items in the appendix is invasive plants. And this list here is really a partial list. It's really just the most common things that we see around Durham. And that the Conservation Commission just expanded that a little bit. But in the regulations under, in the landscaping regs, 5.4.9, it was set as a piece on invasive species, and it lists as anything prohibited, which is referring to the state's list. So anything on that list which is much more extensive is prohibited. Fortunately, people are not planting these things anymore. And so this item from the appendix is just a shorthand list of the most common ones in Durham.
You can still buy these in the garden centers, though.
You can still get burning bush.
Which one?
Really, you can actually buy that in New Hampshire?
I've seen burning bush, yeah.
I've seen it for sale.
I've seen it from some.
Really?
So can I just ask a question on that? The partial list on this 5.4.9, is this in addition to what the state prohibits, or is this a short form?
It's a short form, right.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are all on the state list, and then there's a lot of others as well if you go to the website.
And do we have net additions that the state does not prohibit?
No, but the state has two lists. They have the state prohibited list, and then they have a watch list, which is not quite as, not totally established. But for Durham's regulations, we include everything on the state's prohibited list and on the state's watch list. So the state's watch list is not, I don't believe it's prohibited, so ours is broader.
So ours is everything prohibited plus the watch list, which is most likely will move into maybe a prohibited state, but it's kind of on the border.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
It says,
So, Michael, I had one question. There is no forcing mechanism in any of our laws that say if you have private property and you got these things, there's no requirement to have anybody remove them, right? Even though it's a best practice that everybody should.
well, and this
do.
is actually in the site plan regulations. So, we could add this to the town's ordinance, probably not the zoning ordinance. We could add this to the regular code of ordinances. But where it is now, it only applies when somebody submits a site plan application for multifamily or non-residential, that they could not, these would not be on their landscaping list. So this has no impact on single-family or existing sites. But the town might consider, adopting an ordinance, and then it could be enforced everywhere.
I think it would be very burdensome though for some,
I
yeah.
I'd
You want me
say,
going around digging all that junk out? Good
I
luck
have
with
been-
that way.
Yeah.
I have been
Oh,
I
working.
can't afford it.
if you went around and
So
cut
go
down all the
away.
Norway maples in town, everybody would be complaining about the sun being so
I get
bright.
every one of these in my yard, and we have acted very aggressively toward taking down burning bush. My whole yard was burned, but I'll tell you what, I finally built, I have plans. I built over one, a deck over one, and I have plans to extend a deck just to build over the burning bush that keeps coming back. That's the only answer that I have to get rid of this stuff. And I can't, we can't keep up with it. I don't know I don't think you could ever, it's one thing to take it out, but you can't keep up with it, it comes back.
Yeah, I only asked the question just so it's clear in my
I
mind.
was saying, that if
Yeah.
the town wanted to, that would be a prohibition against planting it.
But for
We would
new
not require people
construction,
to remove
for
it.
new
That- we never do
construction,
that.
where our ordinance says you can't plant any of the bad stuff in new construction. That's really the objective
it
of
says.
this.
Yeah, and if you need some, come to my yard.
As part of the
Sally has it.
landscaping plan, none of this stuff is included.
And then just one more point on that, I think they just say you can't plant it, you don't have to remove it if it's invasive. It's not like you need to remediate for it, right? You just can't add it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although, if somebody came in for a site plan, like the ATO fraternity, when they came in on Garrison Avenue, they had I'm forgetting what it was. They had some invasive species, and the planning board asked them to remove it, and they said they would. But as part of a site plan, you could require that certain invasive species be removed.
It's a tough job on some of those things, but I actually had a new one.
So, is this ready to move on to a public hearing?
Definitely.
What's our agenda look like for the 5th? Not 5th, the 12th.
For the, the 12th, 12th of March, we will have Mill Plaza's coming back. We will have, it could be busy, we'll have the new application for Dunkin' Donuts. There may be something else on there.
I would move this to,
So you could do
We do
this
it
at
on
the
the
March
26th.
26th meeting?
You know, a lot of those likely will continue.
this one I think goes well with 26th.
But yeah, let's put it with the 26th.
And one other question, the Missouri thing, they're just the experts in great plants to use for landscaping. Is that why that's used? or-
That, I think when we put this together 10 years ago, one of the landscaping people that advised us said, they happen to have a great website, so.
Yeah, the one recommendation I would say, because I think it's confusing the way this is done, is I would get rid of this number 5 in Appendix B. This partial list, I think, is just asking for people to read the wrong thing. And they should just stick with going to the state's list and not look at this at all.
Well, that's an option, you know.
So I
That's up
I
to-
understand it's an option, and I'm throwing it out there as something we can discuss next time. You know, the idea is you want things to be clear. You don't, and in my mind, that just clouds the issue. Anything more on this one? All right. Item 11, planned unit development ordinance. We are going to have some time to work on this tonight, hopefully. Proposed planned unit development PUD ordinance. PUDs are special zoning tools which allow for flexible and innovative planning for large-scale mixed-use projects. A draft ordinance has been prepared to accommodate the potential development of the Edge project at UNH, located westerly of the intersection of Main Street and West Mast Road, and other potential large mixed-use projects. Recommend action, continue review. I will note that the Edge project is not completely westerly of Mast Road. They included a parcel on the east side of
Right.
Mast Road as
Where the
well.
orchard, the old orchard.
the old orchard,
Right.
the Leewood Orchard piece, yeah. All right, so to my recollection, there were two things we still have to do. One is we haven't really gone through it page by page and looked at all the comments. And the big outstanding thing was really how does this interact with town council? Which I don't think we actually came to a consensus on yet.
No. We brought up some.
I would like to start working through the front, and because we spent a lot of time talking about the other item last meeting. Unless somebody has some real clarity that they're willing to share, I think we'll start working through the front. Maybe that will help us get clarity for when we get to that section.
I think so.
How's that sound?
Start at the beginning.
That sounds good. And then I was just going to just sort of channel one thing I think Richard said at the end of the last meeting, which was, is there something, I think you used words, in it for the town, or are there some additional things we might be able to do in terms of housing or some other things related to that? And as we think about...
Did everyone review the RFP that UNH put out?
I didn't.
Okay, I read it a couple months ago. It includes other parcels of interest that they asked them to look at, not as a mandatory, but as an optional inclusion, included 66 Main Street. It included another piece of land, I think that was on the other side of Route 4? No, I don't remember where it was, but it included a couple of
Leewood
other.
Orchard.
Leewood Orchards, yeah. As well as the parcel that basically from Mass Road to Route 4.
Where is that? How do we,
Where's which?
the RFP?
The RFP, I hit it by going to a UNH site.
Can I borrow your computer? I can get to that.
So I just have one question on the PUD and.
It's
and
a
going-
long read.
Well, if I pull it up and I can look at it there.
What is that, Heather?
So I think we talked a little bit back and forth about whether this should be focused on the edge and not trying to include sort of an overall. So I had gone through and looked at one of Michael Barrett's previous locations, and it was the one, was it, as you say, it was Buford, right?
Buford?
Oh, yeah.
Buford. And they do, so if we had sort of more of like a core PUD that just describes the process a little bit, but what they do is they do a separate PUD document for every PUD. And I thought it was really interesting to go through it. Some of it was for residential, and one, sort of was for mixed use and things like that. And I think that was brought up in the meeting last time, is if we could decide what we're focusing on. Are we focusing on a PUD only for the edge? Then it might be, good to kind of get that
Easier.
meat. It would be easier, but I think if we just sort of have one document sort of that just sort of says overall these things, and it could only be a couple pages long, that explains that every PUD is going to be a zoning amendment, if that's what we're saying we're doing. So I think that it's difficult to go through this, in my mind, until I understand which way are we going to go.
Yeah.
That was why I had some of the comments in the first couple of pages were me asking effectively that.
Okay.
And my initial desire, back when I thought we would be starting on this in November, was I would have preferred to be aiming at something that is more generic, if any progress, and we're running out of time. So I think at this point, even if I don't think we have time to try to do a generic one.
Yeah, no, I think we
Yeah.
should start with the Edge project, and then
Yeah.
if we should maybe follow that up with more of an imagination of what if somebody else approaches us for another location?
Yeah.
How would we want to set that up so that it would be going?
Thank you. I think it would be easier to have it set up for this specific site. And I think having that format, considering there's site-specific dynamics,
It's
it
easier.
could be
It-
different.
Yeah, part of me thinks that there's not much difference between the two, but then there's the part of me that says history has always found rabbit holes for us to dive down whenever we try to do something a little broader. So, I mean, we can see how it goes, but
Okay, that's my
So,
confusion as we go through.
I think also we should be aware there's a kind of a tension between this issue and the issue of how the master plan for the PUD gets approved. If, for example, we use this format and the PUD enabling ordinance covers then, large, when in theory, we really have no assurance that the large tracts that are not going to be part of the edge couldn't even change ownership, and a very large, much larger project could be proposed with only the very minimal use restrictions and so forth. At that point, I don't think that the planning board should be approving that. It's too important to the town. And, if there were many hundred acres to the north of 4 or something like that that had changed hands. I mean, I know this is a remote scenario, but I think we have to write the ordinance right if it's going to sort of cast a broad net and enable the proposal of PUDs in areas that we haven't even imagined. I don't think we should have to try really to imagine it. And, now that's too future looking. But so it was also the case that I mentioned that I've seen other model PUD ordinances where we just, the enabling ordinance establishes the PUD and then just for the subject area that's contemplated. And Michael had a concern there that might be viewed as spot zoning, and I was quite skeptical, but I might be wrong, but it didn't seem like spot zoning to me, but he could speak to that concern.
Yeah, you're probably, I mean, I doubt it, because I think you're probably right, because it's a large area, and it still is a broad planning concept that would be applied with flexibilities.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that will be a problem.
If we choose to go that way.
Well, I mean, either way, we're not saying anyone can come in and do a PUD by right.
No.
Right?
No,
That's not even nowhere in this draft, right?
No,
So
but
they have,
as proposed, you
But
were
they
saying
have
the
to-
planning board could approve it, which I think it should be a political decision made by elected people.
I don't think so.
Well,
But I
are we,
well, let's go through page by page. We'll get
Okay.
there when we get there. All right, so anything on page 1 that people are concerned with? I believe we already dealt with the comments up above.
Yeah, I mean, the main comment from Craig Seymour,
Was that concern we were just discussing?
yeah, and you've spent some time with that.
Yeah. Page 2.
this Paul of what comment? I didn't see the excellence. I think that's cured
Might
now,
have
right?
been, let's see. Let's see.
Or is that, that's a
No,
little.
first line of the paragraph.
Oh.
First line on the page.
Oh, at the top.
So Michael, you're just trying to say we want something good, right?
It's gotta
Is
be
it-
great.
It's
Yeah.
gotta be
As
great,
Richard Kelly says, with a PUD, they need to dazzle you.
yeah. And Paul, what are you hesitating about there? It's too hard to define excellence.
Exactly. Excellence, what is excellence in large-scale development? I don't know.
You know it when you see it.
And if I don't
though.
know, and I've been on this board for 10 years, if I don't know that, how is anybody going to make that call?
Well, you know it when you see it.
But I mean, that's
It's
I guess both
subjective.
in the eye of the beholder, and then maybe there's some best practices as well that
Yeah.
everyone sort of agrees with. And I don't know if we would need to call them out. I think we can kind of like just set the bar at
Well, when you
excellent.
get a dozen people from the community come up and saying, this isn't excellent,
It's excellence.
how,
Excellent.
I think that's, I mean, it's hard to define, but you're right,
It's very
because,
subjective.
some people think anything over 2 stories is ugly. You don't
Style of
like
architecture.
Eichler's with flat roofs, you don't like this, I mean, it goes on. I
Michael
mean,
likes old Victorians and I like
and we like
contemporary.
modern, and nobody should have, small lots, we should all have at least a half an acre. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. How many square feet per person?
zoning ordinance shouldn't be subjective, right?
Right.
They need to be
Specific.
I
square
entirely
corners,
agree.
very objective type statements and rules. And this just sounds subjective to me.
So how do you then?
I would just remove "and excellence." Is the purpose of the art is to promote flexibility in large-scale development? What's wrong with that?
Because you're going farther
Well-
down, you go through statements about how we would review the concept and plans. So that's where that feedback would come, just like in any preliminary
Right.
review that we would do. So I agree with Paul that doesn't need to be there.
In general, would you just say, I don't think we want to, this ordinance could be on the books for a long time. And that's another thing that's pernicious about subjective language. And why an enabling ordinance, in my mind, should be more mechanical than discursive.
So maybe we table this particular one and just say, we need a sentence that says something to this effect, but really says it's to create a really
You want to,
good project,
you want
however we say that.
quality
And we could
of-
talk about that kind of semantics
Yeah,
a lot and not,
But Paul, to yours, would you just strike the word "and excellence" there and call it done?
I would, yeah, and
Promote flexibility.
the last
in a
sentence in that
large-scale development.
paragraph, I think could be tweaked a little cleaner, but I'd be willing to let that one slide. It should enhance the quality of new villas by encouraging attractive, beneficial features, promoting exceptional site and architectural design.
It already says it there, you don't need
Yeah.
the word above.
Yeah, so I think I
you
can
can
live
lose-
with that one, because that's sort of saying what it is we're looking for.
quality development.
But I think the end excellence in large-scale development, I think that's just being too flowery.
You can just lose "and excellence" and make this sentence work. Promote flexibility in large-scale development.
Yeah, you could do that and just
And then
strike
instead of
"and out,"
PhD.
and it would just.
It would be
yes.
fine.
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, so.
I'm good with that.
So in drafting legislation, typically, this is lawyerly stuff, but in the statement of purpose, the idea is that if there's ambiguity later, you want to be able to see, well, what were they up to? So that you make a statement of purpose so that it gives you the basis for interpreting, what might have been ambiguous. So what I did is I deleted all that stuff in I went over a bunch of comments with Michael. I didn't distribute it because I think he's going to probably want to make some of them, and I didn't want to burden you guys with it was a very kind of a heavy markup. But what I said here was the purpose of, and he also helpfully disabused me of some things that were just flat out wrong and wouldn't have worked. So I have to mention that too. But it was a good faith effort to go through all this. And so I said, here I just said, the purpose of this ordinance is to promote efficient and beneficial development within certain of the town of Durham's existing zones through the creation and approval of planned unit developments under circumstances where modifications of the town code are necessary to make such development practical and achievable. Done.
All right,
That's a mouthful.
next.
Was that the first paragraph there?
Yeah, that's a purpose,
The whole purpose.
the whole purpose. You could refer to the master plan, consistent with the master plan. That's all you need. Other than that, you're just, giving someone something to argue about later if they disagree with you.
I need to see it in
Oh, so
writing.
you
Yeah.
would remove that entire second paragraph of PUD
I
towards
think
property
he
owner?
removes, I think that was his complete rewrite of.
It was a complete
of
rewrite.
B.
B.
Yeah.
That was,
So that's three paragraphs down to the one.
Oh, the upland unit development allows a landowner, the purpose of this article is to promote
Well-
flexibility, and then the third paragraph, a PUD affords property. You'd remove all of those.
yeah, I
and
don't think
just-
we need to tell people what a PUD is.
Okay, let's get to the meat and basic requirements, because that's probably, we could,
Yeah.
those top paragraphs,
But I don't disagree with it being
Being
short and
shorter.
sweet.
yeah.
Yeah, next time, if we could have both so we can look at them side by side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta see it.
Because it sounds like it might be cleaner significantly.
Although, in particular, this language might be streamlined, but there's a lot of people that don't know what a PUD is and how it works. And certainly that last paragraph, it really tells you what a PUD is and how it works. This is something different, it's unique. The boards, you negotiate, the board's got to think it's beneficial. It's
if a developer is big enough to be considering doing a PUD, they better know what it is up front.
Yeah, but I think the ordinance should be pretty clear about, for the board, for developers, for the public, what it is. And it's something very particular, and I think
Well,
you want that to be clear.
We can
Yeah.
look at them side by side next time.
Yeah.
One thing, I mean, I don't think, I'm not going to set myself on fire over this. I think it's relatively, I'm not saying this is a yes or no on the whole ordinance of whether this gets done, but I would say the sentence that it involves considerable discretion, I didn't like that because it involves absolute discretion and it sort of implies something else.
Oh, wait, how would you reword that?
Consider, I don't like the word consider.
I don't think we need to talk about the
Yeah,
discretion of the
let's-
town of
let's-
Durham to amend a law.
Let's move on into, that'd be the last, well, okay,
That needs
we'll
to
look
tweak.
at all that
Yeah, we
at
can
the
go.
next go-round,
Right
since
about
we're
it.
going to be looking at new wording for the whole section.
And then can I just mention, just while we're there, because that was an interesting exchange that just took place, and it's somewhat, it indicates two perspectives. One is that we're writing this for the developer and for the town council and for the public.
Community.
So that the public can read this and digest and understand what's taking place there.
That's not go ahead.
Well, but this is the document that many people in public would read to get an understanding of what this is proposing. And so the language there to convey additional understanding with that additional audience in mind makes a lot of sense. If we were just writing it for attorneys, I think the language would be streamlined and not for a broader audience. So I would be inclined, where we think that there might be an audience to be served, that we would keep some of that language in if it comes to that.
Yeah.
So that would be my thought on that.
I just think that language would be great and the explanation's great. I just don't think it belongs in an ordinance.
I agree with Gary in that the zoning ordinance is not an instructional piece, a document.
Well, we could.
It can reference an instructional document. If somebody is unsure of what PUDs are, let's give them a link to go read them up. But we shouldn't be using the ordinance itself as an instructional mechanism
Well,
for basic
Yeah.
things like that.
I think we do find a lot of questions in the community, and any development creates a lot of angst in the community. And I think that I see, we're writing an ordinance, but that ordinance is for a town, and that town is made up of individual human beings that don't spend a lot of time watching planning board meetings. And I think that our ordinances should be user-friendly, and that if somebody just wants to pick it up, it should be able to be written so that they can understand what's really happening. And if they don't know what a planned unit development is, there's a lot of angst that happens in our community whenever we bring something forward. And so if we plan just a very dry approach to it, where we have a lot of people showing up during public comments that are commenting on things that are not even relative, is because they don't understand what's going on. And to direct them simply, so I think I agree with Peyton that we do need to keep in mind that, yes, this is an ordinance, it is a document of law, but it is for the purpose of the people of this community.
Yeah, I think that's a very legitimate purpose, and so I think that there
There's a
might be
balance.
other ways of doing it that make the ordinance cleaner, that's all. I think it's a totally legitimate purpose to give people what they need to get comfortable with it. And it should be easily accessible if they grab the ordinance. I just don't, my point's made.
Fair enough.
All right, basic requirements. So at the time, when I was reviewing this, we were in the middle of doing the workforce ordinance. We were still calling it the workforce ordinance at that time. So I raised this one question about,
Yes.
Should there
if
be
the
a
PUD was in a zone which was covered by an overlay district, for instance, could they use the overlay district inside the PUD? So this is a question for my my own clarification, because this particular one, I believe, is in a workforce housing zone.
There could be some, there
It
could be
is in
some
the overlay
overlap.
district.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, hopefully both of them stand on their own. The attainable, you know, you put a lot of work into the attainable housing ordinance, and that's a complete package. If somebody wanted something really creative, I suppose they could try to do that, but that would be a lot of work.
They could probably
I
carve
mean,
out a
but
piece,
there might be somebody who would want, to do that.
okay.
and they could. No reason.
conflict between the two? That's really the big question in my mind, whether there would be conflict.
Yeah, I mean, if they were doing an attainable housing ordinance, they have to follow that ordinance. If they wanted to do an affordable housing project, but they wanted something very different from that ordinance, they could propose
They'd
another.
want to
It just
ignore
seemed-
the overlay and just.
Yeah, they could ignore the overlay.
But if they wanted to implement the overlay, they
They
really would
they
have to
follow
carve
that.
out a distinct piece of land yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
They
But
couldn't
can-
just do it anywhere.
But could, within the PUD, could the town require a certain percentage of attainable housing?
Yeah.
Within the project?
Well, it's not in here, so I think that'd be difficult without it being in the main ordinance.
Well,
But
Well,
you
that's what
can-
I'm saying,
Could
is
we
should we
put
have
it-
it in here or not?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But if that's important, you know, that could be in a PUD, that X percent has to be.
Like I was reviewing Cambridge, a few of Cambridge PUDs, and two things that sort of stood out there. One was park size. They're always asking for public space and defined as a park. And then they're always advocating and requiring essentially affordable housing at some percentage of those units that are going to be built there. So when I was looking at, and then they're also always advocating and requiring connected corridors of transportation zones, non-vehicular on those. So there's like those three things were always sort of mixed there.
I think it should be, I think we should advocate for some, whatever term we want to use, affordable housing, maybe even go down to that workforce housing, considering what the state's numbers are on that. And the reason I think it's really important is because we are looking at these big facilities and we're forgetting who is actually doing the service work in these facilities. We have janitorial service, we have retail service, we have baristas, we have restaurant workers. These people are making, between custodial, $16 to $20 an hour tops, some even less. So they are going, and they are the ones that are going to be making all of this stay together. See how long a company lasts when they don't have custodial service.
Well, a lab.
Well, you
And-
might-
and
that's the
lab
question.
technicians, so-
I mean, this is oriented toward the edge, and I
think a
suspect
percentage.
UNH has not given a lot of, there's going to be a significant residential component.
They have not.
And it's going to be market. I don't think UNH is thinking of having, affordable or subsidized
No,
housing.
they probably aren't.
But, that's a question.
UNH.
They're gonna put grad
the RF
students in there.
Yeah, the
Yeah, but
RFD
that's
does
not-
call for a zone for grad students, which will be affordable.
Yeah, but a grad student is not washing the floors and serving your coffee.
So, affordable housing is an allowed use in the PUD. It's residential, right? And we're letting everything residential. If we want affordable housing to be incentivized some way or emphasized, we should just include one other line here that says, affordable housing is a desired goal, and if we want somebody to do it, give them an incentive that's makes it happen here. Because what's going to happen is somebody's going to show up, this is going to be all carved up into like 8 lots, 8 building lots, and somebody's going to say, I want to put a building there, and they got an economic model that's going to fit. If we really want affordable housing, then there should be an incentive for somebody to build that instead of market rate, something different.
Or if they were to include some affordable housing in their market, right? I mean, just to make a point, let's say you've got to have something available not necessarily build just an affordable housing
Yeah.
unit, but to have a certain percentage that are, carved out for affordable housing, considering we have a tendency in this country to forget the people that are actually servicing us.
Yeah, so we all agree on this board.
Is that a basic
affordable housing-
requirement, or is it a standards and objectives of development?
Yeah, do you
So
want to
does it belong in
encourage it or
C
do you
or
want to
D?
require it? Yeah, I mean, you can put a line in under, D, standards and objectives, and that's certainly good, because this includes all your goals. So do you want to encourage it or require something?
Are we putting?
Sally's in the require camp, I think.
I'm in the required camp, and I don't think it's difficult. We could come up with,
Yeah.
I think that they are probably more able to throw together just some units that are going to be, at a certain percentage below fair market or something.
Should we make the working assumption that we're talking about paring this back now so that it only applies to the
I think it should only apply to the
Should we-
edge.
Because this is
Yeah.
a classic example
Yeah,
of
this needs to
something where
just
we're
apply.
directing our comments on what should go into the ordinance, specifically to the edge, and we're writing an ordinance that, as it stands, applies to a larger area.
It should apply only to the edge. And I think that the opportunity that we have because of the edge, I think it makes the most sense to apply it to
Okay.
the edge.
Well, that would be C1.
What is
Oh, the
C1?
edge.
To
The
say,
location.
Location, PUDs,
Yeah.
this PUD is, what it would say this PUD pertains.
At a minimum, I would think we should standards and objectives, but I'm inclined to be on the required camp, but then the question is to your point, what are the incentives for that?
Yeah,
At which
there
point,
is-
then we need to get down to the next thing, which is how do you incentivize, or how do you,
Do we get
if there was an incentive, or you just require it?
Do we
Yeah,
get
the
into
thing-
density?
well, the thing is with the PUD,
No.
incentives isn't really relevant.
Yeah.
The attainable housing ordinance, it is because you have clear density standards. With a PUD, there's not real, the only incentive is that the developer wants to be approved. And this is a negotiation and a discretionary review. And if they got a lot of nice things in here, then there's a very good chance the board's, we love it, this is great, we approve it. Whereas if they don't have that much good stuff in here and there's some concerns, the board may say, it may not get approved. So there's no set density. So that's the incentive, is that if it's not required, that there's a better chance that everyone says, this is great, yeah, I move to approve.
I think vague is great when it comes, this is only an RFP right now, and there's going to be a lot of smart people, working on putting things together, and they could have, maybe affordable housing doesn't work here, but maybe in some way that we can't envision, but maybe it's really great in some other way. I just don't think we should be too specific while we're looking at an RFP and a lot of talented people are trying to put together a mixed-use plan.
What we're looking at, I guess, so the density, they have discretion when it comes to density. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So they can just say.
propose it, they have to justify
So we
it.
could say, oh, okay, well, they could justify it. We, in here, you say you want a certain percentage of workforce housing, and we don't have to go crazy with it. It could be a certain, 20 or 10 or 5 or whatever. We are going to, in all of the housing facilities. So we are going to be offering these specific ones, and they're just tooled down. They're just a little bit smaller maybe than the other units, or they make the units smaller in general so that they can add these 2 units in. And they can sell market rate, but these will be what we consider workforce housing. And we'll make those available to people that are working within our facilities in our service and our customer service levels or whatever. Outside, not graduate students, because we have a separate section for graduate students. So if the density, if they had discretion, then they can add that, they can put that in. But I do think it is important to add that because there is going to be a lot of employees in that place and they're going to have to create housing.
Yeah, another option
So
is,
we're not arguing whether, we're saying where in the paper.
Well,
do we-
D18 should say,
From my perspective.
D18 should say,
Yeah,
for the purpose of this discussion,
You're adding at 18.
I'm adding
Yeah,
a
adding it.
D18 and I'm saying affordable housing is required at X percentage of all housing development. And we can argue later about what the right percentage is.
yeah.
Oh, and you're saying is required or is desired?
I'm
Required.
saying required.
And that's D18.
Yeah.
You know, the D18.
It goes up to 17.
Therefore,
so
And then
yeah.
just blah, 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 blah.
and then it could be
10?
10,
Or
it could
20.
be,
well,
I
you
wouldn't go
could
as high as
require
20.
that that be a component, and
Yeah,
that's something you
I was-
negotiate with the
I was
applicant.
thinking along with this, like, that a component has to be, and then they come with a number, maybe
With
they
a
come with a
number,
number
yeah.
higher than we were hoping for.
they come in and say
They come
50%,
in low,
somebody's got a
then-
plan, great.
Yeah,
But we could wrestle on that percentage.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think
That's a
fine.
good approach,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's
it's
a
a
If
good
it has to
idea.
be a
Okay,
component,
that's fair
then.
excellent.
yeah.
Now, the other item that came up during that discussion was location. Now, if we are, I mean, is Moodor and Orly too wide a net for what we're writing tonight? Or is that going to be okay?
I think it's okay to, so if this is, I
Yes.
gotta look at the map now.
For
I
tonight,
gotta
I
look at
think,
the map.
So Moodor is the UNH cow farms.
Yeah, I was just
Between
thinking
Route
about
4
across,
and-
I was thinking of Tech Drive.
Now it is.
Tech Drive is Orly.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's, and it
Now.
should be in there. I think.
Now it is.
If this is general.
Now, the thing with Orly
It's
is
not general.
Orly does reach down all the way to Packers Falls Road.
That's if it's
to
not
top-
general.
Above Mast Road.
I would,
Not Mast Road, above Mill Road.
is this going to be just for the, is it general
I know,
or is it
I'm
just
trying to
for-
look at the fading map over there.
I know.
Yeah, so if, you
doesn't it-
see that neck of blue of RB that goes out to the left?
But, so doesn't,
Orly reaches all the way down to that.
so this just brings up the question though, is the edge isn't in those areas, do we
Oh, no,
include it in
it
this
is in there.
document or is this our general?
The edge is in Orly.
So
Edge
they
is
can
right
do
in the
this whole,
center of
that whole
Orly.
area?
Orly goes off from two
But
other
again,
directions beyond
are we
that.
doing general, to bring, Gary's question to front again, are we bringing general or are we doing specific?
Well, in my
for-
mind, general would be, because one of the things I was going to say if we were having this discussion in November is that why are we restricting it to Moodor and Orly?
Well,
It just makes things really easy if you just say,
Well,
we're creating a PUD for the geographical area that's subject to the edge.
yeah,
yes.
Yes.
that's
Wait, how-
easier.
I'm not sure we can say
No,
that.
you have to.
We can't say
You
that.
could, I think you could, if you wanted to zone, a special zone for, map 107, lot 42,
We could
you could
create a
do that,
That-
but I don't think that's the right approach.
No, because Laura's going to say that's spot zoning. We tried that with CB1, CB2. And she
Well,
said, no,
the
you can't
other,
do that.
but the other, even if it's not spot zoning, well, I would tend to agree with you, but the problem is, if you call, the edge zoning district and you do this map 102 lot 46, then you rezone that, and what if they say, well, actually, we also want to include the other side of Mass Road? Then you got to go through another zoning process, or we want to cut it back. And the other thing is, if you zone it for that, then they have to do, I just think that's not going to work, for several reasons. You're zoning land, and what if they want to change it? Then you got to rezone. And also, if you zone it, the edge, well, what if UNH doesn't do it?
Right.
Then they're stuck with that. There should be a base zoning district. You drop this in, just like the attainable housing ordinance. The other thing is that this is much more conducive to a general PUD ordinance, which spells out process and rules, flexibility, changes, and it's harder to incorporate that in a base zoning ordinance. There's nothing, this is the stated way it's usually done. I don't see any advantage to try to tailor it to lot 42.
Here's my thought. I mean, I'm quite happy with it being Moodor and Orly, with the exception of one little piece of Orly. All right? So what I would like to exclude would be the areas that we also excluded effectively for the workforce, for the overlay district.
More fields and that's.
Which is, you know, those
Probably
areas,
should
if it's on Mast Road and Main Street, up in that, great, but that area of Orly that is not contiguous with Mast Road, that's the Oyster River Forest and going down towards Mill Road, that part should be excluded.
Should this be the same? I mean, you can map this any way you want. Should that be, is that the same as the attainable?
It's not
overlay?
exactly, no, because the attainable overlay also has areas on the other part of town.
Oh, right. But if
Right.
if you just have the westerly part of,
But
is that
yes,
the same? You can do that.
But if we use that same boundary line that we do in that area for this that we did for the other one, I'd be happy with that. Because these are the areas that we'd be looking for this kind of development. We said it's good enough for workforce housing, it should be good enough for this PUD.
You can do that if that's.
How do people
So
feel on
Can you go through
that?
that one more time? Because I'm looking at the zoning on GIS now with Moodor and Orly.
All right, so,
Oh, you can pull up attainable housing too,
so
if you want to see that.
Orly goes all the way down to here. That's Mill Road,
Yep.
right? I don't want this part, I want to, so if you can see Mast Road up here, so let's include Mast Road.
If you want to see the attainable housing.
Yeah, and, you know,
Is it on the GIS?
Moodor,
It's on the-
I'm very comfortable with Moodor
But it's not on
because
the
it's
GIS.
UNH
It's all
land.
UNH land.
If they wanted to build a city on it, they would have
They can put anything
proposed
they
it.
want, yeah.
They can do what they want. So Moodor is fine, and Orly minus the sensitive lands from down Mass Road.
How
That's-
about Orly property owned by UNH? Can we say it that way?
Can I
It's
just
tough
put it on the
because-
screen? Just
Yes,
to
please.
see?
No.
No, can you put it on the screen?
Peyton, can I?
You can
pull
put
it up
anything you
here?
want on the
Oh, but we
screen,
can't
but
do
I'm
that?
answering
Can
you
I-
that, no, that would be too restrictive.
No, yeah.
Just,
We want,
May I respond to Michael's asking whether he didn't see any advantage to paring it back to one? And I believe it could totally be done to the way Paul and Michael are talking about. The tension is, at that point, we should just be very careful with two things. First of all, things like this workforce housing requirement, because at that point we could include it, but we might have to say something like workforce housing to the extent that the PUD would create demand, should meet its own demand, something like that,
Yeah.
because, or,
I don't think we need to add that. I think just the same.
but at any rate, there may be no need for workforce housing in a future PUD, but,
Well,
but the other tension is with the approval process, and whether it's a town council or a planning board approval. That's the other tension if it applies to a broader area, and we're contemplating everything here is directed at the edge. We just have to be very disciplined about knowing we're not just talking about the edge.
and we know the areas
Which
that,
is-
we are pretty familiar with the areas that it could happen in.
But we have to define it.
And we just have
in our
to basically need a
document.
definition.
yeah, and
We can pick 0 as the percentage if we want. One reason I just
You
put
talk
that
about,
on
you're back to
there.
affordable housing.
Yeah,
Oh.
and so, I think we should,
some percentage.
Well,
Let-
I think we should keep working through
Let-
the document.
Let's
So we-
let's not jump back and forth. We
Yeah.
lose track of where we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, which is why you said.
Well, do you want to say for now, it's the westerly part of attainable housing? I'll send you a map and you can.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what the section of Orly that we took out of the overlay district, I want to take it out of this as well.
Yeah. So if you want to go with that, I'll send you a map and you can talk
Yeah.
about it more later on.
Moodor, Orly, minus that piece, I think we're safe.
Okay.
All right, anything more in C, basic requirements?
Basic requirements. Yeah.
All right, moving on to D. Standards and objectives of development. So we have number 1, setting standards.
Were we going to
That's-
take the word master plan and call it?
Development plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
development
Yeah,
plan.
we just changed it.
Yeah, that's actually, because people are going to get it
Do we need to mark
confused
that
with the
wherever it
town's
is?
Yeah, I'll
master
change
plan.
it. They'll get
Okay.
confused.
They will think
Highlighter
you're
so
talking
you
about
can
the
get 'em all
town's
logoed
master
No,
up.
I
plan.
made a note to myself.
Okay.
It's not the town's, people will think it's the town's
be
master plan.
confused,
that they're
right.
confused with, yeah.
So we're going to have the PUD development plan.
Or
No, that's
since a
basic stuff,
PUDD
right?
is development, so it's a planned unit development plan.
Yeah. I'll just make it development plan everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, lose the master.
Yeah.
Should probably use.
That would really throw people off.
We should probably lose that term
All right.
anyways.
All right, number 2. All right, so there's a
Is this-
comment for number 2.
Is this setting, we just, traditional neighborhood development? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Traditional
Yeah, which
neighborhood
is like a
development.
form-based
Yeah.
code.
So, I made a variety of different comments and what I went over with Michael, but I think I'm just not gonna go over those here or interrupt the course of this because of too much delay. But Michael has said he wants to adopt some of them, they're just drafting things, but or do you want me to mention them now?
Well,
while
we
we're going
have-
through?
Or the ones, maybe Michael,
Or I
the
can-
ones that you want to bring in.
Or I
Are
can
they-
just incorporate your comments into.
Are they
the next
kind of-
draft
Yeah,
or
that's
something-
kind of- I'm
Something
trying to
like
think of
that.
a
All right,
efficient way.
so what
Are
about
they-
this
Yeah.
piece in blue here about specialized areas that aren't conducive to T&D?
Yeah, that's just kind of standard for those projects. Most of it's a T&D, but if there's like industrial
industrial
areas,
areas,
you know,
yeah.
those are not, those are designed
Right.
differently.
Okay.
And your comments losing the word attractive.
Yeah,
Where was that? Okay, create a walkable streetscape?
creative
Yeah.
walkable
Uh-huh.
streetscape, yeah.
Lose any subjective adjectives. Just overall.
All right. Anything more on 2? 3, form-based code.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's nothing there. 4,
design.
street design. A modified grid.
I think on street design, you can squeeze the street skinnier if you go with one ways. And, I think a lot of times we end up saying, man, you need a fire truck able to fit in both directions and that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden it gets massive.
Really huge.
So
Yeah.
squish the road tight as you can and still get the access. That's the only thing I really have to.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's where you were going with your streets widths maybe reduced. Get skinny streets going one way and you save a lot of space.
So all one way, one way.
Well,
streets.
no, you don't wanna specify.
Some one way, not all.
Well, you don't
one
Not
way.
all.
want to specify that. but
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
So
they could propose that.
Yeah,
They-
one
yeah.
ways to
Where it
be
makes sense.
encouraged.
they'll be
Yeah.
looking at how to do this. So I had the thing here, where, I think it was like the last several lines, right? Starting with use of traffic mitigation, right there in the middle. I think from there to the end, if we just replaced it with pedestrian and microtransit ways should be prioritized over vehicular traffic to the greatest reasonable extent, I think that covers it.
Yeah.
And it specifically says what we're aiming for.
Well, I like that. It's more aggressive than sort of simple traffic calming. It's that we're really voting in one, we're endorsing one design here, and I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, so replace
that
the
would
last
get-
3 sentences with what we have in green.
Yeah.
I had a comment here that just was more disclosure. The list locations and compositions of all street sidewalks and pedestrian amenities shall be disclosed, but may be subject to varying requirements within designated areas. The transect idea, and all proposed traffic mitigation and calming measures shall be described. One thing I thought we should add is road ownership and maintenance responsibilities shall be disclosed. Right, I think we want the clear disclosure on, if the owner of a subdivided lot has a responsibility for some road within it, but,
That's usually negotiated, right?
yeah, that's why I think it just needs to be disclosed so that we can negotiate it.
And that should actually be true of all the infrastructure, right? Roads and
Right.
utilities.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what,
Yeah, that's, DPW would be bringing that up,
Yeah.
brings that up almost during the technical review, really.
Yeah, they'll discuss that at technical review right off the bat.
But,
And that is common, I mean, they know that.
Okay. So we got rid of the rich network of
Yeah, a rich
of
network.
sidewalks.
Michael likes his.
All right, you don't want the word rich in there.
He's got
We already
very
got
Well,
rid
it's
of it.
already gone, the whole thing's
flowery
gone now, so
adjectives.
my comment is now null.
No rich.
We should make a book of Michaelisms. His rich use of
Cool
adjectives.
Rich and excellent.
all right, I think that finishes page 3. Page 4,
Mix of uses.
mix of uses, there's nothing,
Well, it doesn't,
that's short and sweet on that one, is
but
that
it
good?
isn't, it doesn't tell you what, it just says it's a design blend, but what's the mixed
The
use?
PUD
Are you
shall include
talking
a mix
about
of uses.
industrial?
Well, that's what the developer's coming in with. We don't know what's in the developer's head, in terms of
Okay.
what kind of uses they're going to have, and if we
I don't
get,
know. Then do we even need this?
But their
Well, we-
RFP is calling that out.
I'm just saying, but what do we have 5 in there
Well-
for? Because we've already described what a PUD is.
reasonable point, well,
So they will be blending harmoniously.
I don't think
All
we
right,
need
well, you could
5.
just say a mix of uses, period, if you prefer.
I would just say you don't need 5. You already know that it's a mix of uses because it's a planned unit development.
yeah.
Well, but that's more
We
your
probably should have it in
purpose
there.
and definite.
What
it's
I'm
just
doing
good
right
to-
now is I'm taking a look at what section it's in and say, does it belong? Standards and objectives of development.
We want to mix
I mean,
of
this is the
uses.
list they go through, so you
Yeah.
want to have everything here.
I mean, is
I think
it
it's
there, or does it fit better,
I think
you know, as part of the process where they
No.
describe the mix of uses, or what?
that's the approach I took is in the application section, I think I had a big list.
I think the mix of uses is fine for this section. 'Cause it's-
Are we simply saying you can't use a PUD to create an industrial park?
Correct.
Right.
So do you want to say just mix of uses, period, or leave it the way it is?
You said the industrial park is in the allowed uses.
Well, the idea is, by saying the design has to include a mix of uses, we're saying you can't just come in and have a uniform use for the whole thing.
It has to be a mix.
True. But
But if we don't put it here, we don't close that door on them. Going back to the thinking of what
yeah,
can
I
happen.
mean,
So even though it seems like a pitiful little sentence, it serves a purpose.
I think it's fine.
I agree with you, and
Just lose the harmoniously together.
All right, mix of uses, period.
Yeah.
you could say disclose the mix of.
Because we've
proposed
used
mix of
harmonious in
uses
6
too.
already.
That what?
You use harmonious in 6, so maybe you don't need it in both.
We don't
of them.
need
Good
it in
point.
5.
Okay,
unless the
mix of
PUD
uses, period. I think that works.
Mix of uses.
You know, I can see how, you know, there's one way to make everything harmonious. They get 3 people up there and they're speaking in unison, harmoniously. Their entire proposal is
'Cause, you know,
harmonious.
sometimes,
true, right.
sometimes things are fun and edgy and aren't harmonious, but are conflicting in design, but make a really kind of cool
All right, so
setting.
maybe we need to get the word funky.
I mean, well,
I
harmonious, you know what harmonious is? Is boring.
The juxtaposition of
All right, we
the
want- it's-
different
it is the edge.
All right, all right.
It's the edge.
All right,
Moving on to
all right,
number
all right,
6.
All right, all right.
design
Don't make me pull the
elements.
gavel out. All right, number 6.
Make me pull that gavel.
See, I'm actually not, I think harmonious belongs here.
It's fine,
in
it's
this
All right,
case,
cool.
Right? My thing was like attractive, because attractive is in the eye of the beholder. I'm not sure attractive
To
belongs
promote a
there.
All right, so
harmonious
promote a
pedestrian
harmonious.
oriented.
Yeah.
Okay.
that makes
Because
sense.
that harmony with the pedestrian
Yeah,
and the environment. But we don't need attractive.
right.
All right.
I don't think we need to tell them it needs to be carefully designed.
All right, number
The requirement
7.
shall promote.
Let's put it this way, if
All
they
right.
don't think it needs to be carefully designed, they're
Shall-
gonna find out at the first meeting.
Wait, what
I
was
think they
that?
probably think that's their job.
Shall be designed.
Yeah.
All right, shall be designed to promote, okay.
A harmonious pedestrian-oriented environment.
Yeah,
Okay. We go with 6 now?
yeah.
Oh, I thought we were just finished 6.
All right,
We
7?
are now.
And we should add, oh, it also can be on-street. So on-street or behind or the buildings.
Can we encourage bike parking right here?
Sure, of course.
We should be requiring bike
Yeah.
parking and encouraging of, I don't know, do we have anything here about,
That's in transportation, number 9.
oh, it is in bicycle
But on
way.
parking,
Yeah, including bike parking, yeah.
let's
Yeah,
treat
sure.
bikes and cars equally.
I-
Doggone it.
Well, what about other forms of microtransit?
Well, I mean.
Gotta have the scooters in there.
Well, they'll
You know,
be
I'm-
with the scooters
Where-
there are a lot of scooters. in
There are a
town.
lot of scooters coming out of cottages and west.
Okay,
and
but
the
look at number
lodges.
9. We cover that in number 9.
Okay.
Yeah, accommodation.
Well, you cover
Now-
transportation, but not the,
Now, I
Let's
have a
put on
problem with the
parking
last
orders.
sentence
Maybe we should have
on
storage.
parking.
Well, I think we need to circle back to parking for bicycles.
Well, when we hit 9, if we have to come back, that's fine. But in general, take a look at my comment there with regards to buffering parking from
Oh.
the pedestrian ways. And stuff. You know,
Extent feasible?
fences and buffering mechanisms are opposed to the efficient foot traffic in this situation. So,
because when you create that buffer, all of a sudden you have to
all of a
traverse
sudden,
around the buffer.
all of a sudden,
instead
yeah,
of-
you have to go around everything as opposed to being able to go to where you're trying to get to. I could be parked right next to it, but I can't get to it from here.
Unless there's a cut through from bushes and things like that.
Yeah,
Well,
but
which is how all the landscaping dies.
Yeah, this is maybe, my sense is this, maybe we don't need to be so specific.
I don't think it's, if the parking is all on the side and in the rear, I don't think we need to really worry about seeing it. We see
Yeah.
parked cars all the time.
All right,
It's
delete the
okay to
last
see
sentence.
parked cars.
Okay, delete last sentence. On we go.
All right. 8, utilities.
I think that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. 9, transportation. Okay.
Accommodation, when you say accommodation, are you meaning parking?
So, yes. So,
Storage.
We're in number 9, so
We should call it
storage.
storage.
So in the case of, in the case of even bicycles nowadays, they're less and less want to leave them outside in a bike rack than put them in a
Covered
secure
inside.
storage area where they're not going to get stolen.
You're gonna bring the scooters in with them.
So
Same
well, do
thing.
you want to say?
Well, scooters, depending on how they are, a lot of the e-scooters and stuff, they're not allowed to bring into the buildings.
They're worried about the batteries.
Is that lithium battery?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the lithium battery fire hazard issue.
I think accommodation delegates it to the designer, and it says,
Yeah.
figure out what to do with all
Yeah.
these
I
things.
agree.
Works.
But I like that you called out pedestrian ways, bicycle ways, microtransit.
Yep.
I'm okay with that, with
It's okay the way
Okay.
it is, yeah.
That's fine.
So are we adding bike parking in 7?
No.
No.
We're okay with accommodation.
Let me just say,
I would explicitly call out bike parking because I think, by default, when people think parking, they think vehicle
Just cars.
parking. And I think it's worth some language there to indicate that you also need to consider bike parking.
Or just use that
Because-
multiple modes of transportation thing in that
Or
one
just
up
call
there.
out
Well,
explicitly bike parking.
I
because-
think, all right, so 9, I see the gap. 9 is talking about a combination for the mode of travel but
Versus-
isn't really dealing with what happens once you get there.
That's correct.
So but you could just put
Accommodation
parking.
and storage for
Yeah.
multiple modes of transportation.
Just make that the
Exactly.
last
We need to
in
add a
parking,
storage
right?
component to number 9, or we have to go back to parking and say, and add a storage slash non-vehicular
Well,
parking.
where would be
to
the most
7.
logical place?
So
I would
I-
put it under 7
I think-
because it makes sense to use that accommodation of multiple modes of
Multi.
transportation, storage, or whatever that is, and put it as the last paragraph in 7. Because then you're looking for parking.
I would call parking out in 7 as both vehicle parking and this other,
And-
was bike parking and
Alternate.
multimodal parking.
Alternative.
And then, later on, they're probably
Pretty soon
gonna,
they'll be flying little.
you're also gonna wanna have storage inside your building for that stuff too, which is where everyone's going, but they.
So how about if we just change the title of 7 from parking to parking and non-vehicular storage?
It's just parking.
Or
Bike
whatever.
parking is parking.
But there's still
Or non-
vehicles. I
Okay,
mean,
non-automobile
so-
storage?
All off-street parking for automobiles and
'Cause-
multimodal devices shall be located in their rear loader. How
I
about that?
think,
Should be considered, just say should be considered.
Well, we say all off-street
The
parking.
multi-mode thing.
The assumption is all off-street parking.
You know,
The
I-
assumption here is
actually,
cars.
Yeah.
well,
Just make it a
I
separate
don't-
sentence there.
yeah, I like keeping 7 strictly for the car parking. And in 9, let's add another paragraph. I would make it a new paragraph so it stands out. That talks about bicycles, parking slash storage and other
Couldn't we just
transportation
keep it
storage.
in parking though and go parking slash, parking and then put in parentheses, cars and
Modal.
Well, because
devices.
it's not parking for those things for the most part.
Well, you're
No, it
parking
is.
it, you're just
You're-
maybe
You
on
are,
a
you're
wall
parking.
or.
I pedal on over to the data center and I go and meet with some folks in the data center and then I pedal on back to my graduate housing.
Right, but like over at 1921 Madbury, right? You pedal over and then you go inside the building, you hang, right, they got all
Yeah,
the bike storage.
That's
Well,
like,
that's
but
parking
that's
your
like,
bike.
storage as
but that's
opposed-
like storing your bike. There's this temporary parking of vehicles and then temporary parking of bikes. And all you're trying to do is
Yeah.
just carve off, just like explicitly indicate that you want temporary parking for bikes.
Yeah, maybe on
Yeah,
7, we
it's-
just say bike parking should be included, period.
There's
Okay.
an
Under
easy
7, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
One organizational comment. This is quickly becoming sort of a checklist for the applicant to go through and make sure
Yeah.
they include all these things. But there is also another submission requirement section, H5, which overlaps a fair amount. So perhaps if we make sure everything that is in H5 makes its way in here, we can just include a cross-reference in H5 that says disclosure of the means of compliance with all of the objectives of D.
That makes sense.
Wait, can you say, what are you saying?
You could, that in H5, you could say, instead of going through the list of all of the things, we could just make, make sure that we could just say in H that they should provide an explanation of all of the way that they've addressed all of the standards and objectives of developments in D. Then you could cut out things like parking information, right, and land uses.
Why
and-
don't
So
we-
first off, H5, H6 where it belongs.
Generally.
The list,
Oh, it's-
the
oh,
list
that's
in
right,
H5 is
existing.
wrong to begin
Existing.
with, and I have comments there stating such.
Why don't we just-
Well, it does, it says
And we're
both.
jumping all over
We're
back and
jumping
forth
up. Why
again,
don't
which is
we
going to get us
wait?
lost.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
just
all
stay, and get there.
So we added the comment about bike parking
Bike
in
parking.
7,
That's what we did,
and now
yeah.
we're on
8.
10.
We're on 10?
Because we
Yeah.
wrapped up.
Yeah, because we went down to
transportation.
9, we were dealing with
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
transportation, and so we're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
add bike parking
Yeah.
to 7, because we didn't
Level
fit in that.
of development.
Level of development, the applicant shall provide,
Can I just ask a question on this? So is it the case that there would be, that each building that's built could have totally different densities for like, do they need to abide by any density or any standards in terms of size of units or number of units in the building or anything like that, or?
Absolutely.
And what did,
It could vary greatly because one building might be designed for one particular industry, which needs a lot more volume and space because I need 2.5 or 3 stories as a open space where I'm doing my job, as opposed to somebody else who just needs office.
right,
The unifying concept is you walk in and you say, this is a whatever, a New England village, this is a college campus, this is a downtown, there's some element that ties it all
From the
together.
outside, you won't,
On the
can't
outside of the
necessarily
building.
tell what's happening inside.
Exactly.
That's the goal, really, right?
It's what it looks
It's
like.
not until you walk inside that you realize, oh, wow, this building wasn't what I thought it was.
It's actually a gymnasium. Holy cow, I thought it was a church.
Yeah.
Whatever that scenario is.
Yeah.
Right.
And the good ones, they don't even seem like it's a theme park or bogus. It really seems.
Yeah.
but you could have I mean, is there going to be a building height?
Yeah.
And do we know what that building height is?
Six stories.
Well,
We're not there yet. We're on number 10.
We're not there
Go to
yet.
10, finish 10 first.
Because in there, are there any limits to like,
The underlying zone height limits, I believe, are in play.
Well, they can propose anything they want.
But-
I thought there was a 6-foot,
there's a
6-story.
There's a
limit.
6 foot.
There's a, I mean, 6-story
Or
limit.
6 story, yeah, there is a
But
6 story.
in answer to your question, Peyton, in the forms-based zoning, these plans typically have these transects, which they do like a cross-section geographically of the whole thing, and they define different areas and have different height restrictions so that the reviewer can see the overall shape of the development and where the tall buildings will be permitted and where they'll be lower. And then they have sort of like Lego type general shapes of buildings that could go in those. Is that?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I guess I was more wondering, in a 6-story building, could they propose that they could have, I don't know, 200 units in there?
Oh, they can propose anything they want if they can justify it and then you approve it.
Right,
Yeah.
but would that be when they go to build that building, or is that
No, that would be part of their
That's
All
what
right.
the
development plan.
the
development
detail,
plan?
yeah.
So they would say there's a 6-story building there with 300 units
Yeah,
is there, that's
Yeah.
part of the plan.
right.
And then,
So that would be in their PUD development plan. Now, they can present that different ways. They can say, we want to have a total of 800 units, flexibly distributed, and you look at what they propose and if you're comfortable with it. But usually there's some precision.
so this number 10 is just indicating that they need to provide the level of development that they're proposing as part of the plan.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all that's
And
indicating.
showing that some figures saying it's not a pipe dream.
Yeah, like 10 is related to 1. 1 is saying this is the density, and then 10 is saying they need to justify it.
Got it.
All right.
Okay.
So
Now,
11,
10 maybe should go into submission of materials, but we'll get to that.
Well, 10 is about saying there's a certain max that's going to occur, and the area can absorb that max from traffic and stormwater and all that stuff. Whether those 10 buildings get built at that max or not is a market thing.
Or whether it's one building gets this block and one building gets this block, but they're just going to give us the total level of development across the entire PUD.
Well, remains to be
Plus or
seen.
minus.
They have to give a level of detail, site by site, that you're comfortable with, that it makes sense and it works. And you probably don't want a total, well, it's going to have, 800 units distributed. Well, you don't want to know that because you want to know, well, roughly, how is it going to go?
Right.
And you don't want the first person in, first sub-developer, he takes
To
up
grab it all.
800. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that's what the form-based code does.
Yeah.
all right. So we're good with 10, moving on to
That's
11?
fine. Yep.
Building heights,
Yeah,
so
there's
this is
6
where we
stories.
say 6-story limit.
And so my question there is, why stop at 6 stories if somebody's got a good idea?
Yeah, what difference does it make? What's the big deal? And what's the
It's up to
magic?
you.
What's magic about 6 stories?
I think I may have gotten a sense from UNH that
Is that what they
that
want?
they, might want to go as high as 6 stories. Unlikely they'd go higher.
Well, they've
I
done
mean-
8 before.
So you can do what you want here, but I think, some residents and maybe council will be more comfortable if the ordinance has a maximum. I mean, you don't have to put it in. They could propose 12-story buildings.
We could say 6, and then that could be in the change process. They come in and say 8, and we got a good reason,
They
okay,
could al- and
that's
if
a change.
They could always make 12 or 15-foot stories, in which case it's a 70 or 80-foot tall building.
I'd be game to stay with 6, and then in the changes to PUD,
Yeah, but
that
they-
could be
but they
either a
can't.
minor or significant.
If the ordinance says maximum 6, that's the maximum they can
They'd have to
propose.
get a
I think it's too
variance.
specific for the ordinance, in my opinion.
You can delete.
Not
you can
that I
delete it.
expect it to be more than 6, but let's just say it was a,
Well,
it depends on what they're doing economically. There's a lot of
I think,
economic.
I think they should be tall enough so they can watch the football games.
I get what you're saying, Michael. I think that the
That-
issue that you might come up with in the process, taking it to the council, is that the council will say, so they could have a 20-story high building. It could be a flag to some.
That may be less of a problem right now than has been in past years, because the council's actually looking for tax revenue, so they might be happy to get the tax revenue from that, something like that.
I do see.
I almost have you on the
Yeah.
floor with that one.
I see what you're saying, but I think that there would be some pressure from members of I just think that, I'm not saying that 6, I don't know what is so magic about 6, and I would be more apt to say, let them figure it out. But I think I get where Michael's coming from as to, it could be a red flag in it, and we may end up with putting one in at some point.
So-
because of-
Yeah, but
A pushback.
if we put it in now and it ends up costing us something, we're taking stuff off the table before we
Yeah,
even hit the
I think taking
negotiation
that
point.
sentence
Just take it
out of there
out.
is more
That's a
prudent.
good point.
Especially because if it goes to Tech, imagine it's not the Edge and it's Tech Drive. And they can cluster that at the back
No one would ever see it.
and nobody's ever going to see it. So if you do this, then you're eliminating maybe another possible,
Yeah.
Yeah,
development.
But can you see an
Notice we're all
8-story
thinking
building?
about edge,
Can you
not-
see an
we're not
8-story
thinking
building?
about
But you
dirt
wouldn't
overlay. We're all
see
thinking
it.
about the
We'll
edge.
have them, but you wouldn't even
you
see
go behind
it.
all those
Yeah,
buildings.
right downtown.
It's not a beloved building.
No, but it's there.
It's still
I mean,
there.
All right, well, so what do you eliminate that
Just
kill
eliminate it.
story?
Yeah, kill the sentence.
If the council wants to put something in.
It's a simple thing for the council to add back in at that point if they decide they need it.
Or just put a Post-it on your desk, say, don't approve it if it's more than 6 stories.
All right, open space.
That seems
Yep.
fine.
I think it's good.
Buffers.
That's fine.
I'm glad for a change we have something like that last caveat, because that's lacking from everywhere else in our ordinance.
Yeah.
We have no idea. We haven't, they may find something when they dig it up.
Then it's too late.
And it's,
Well,
it's not only
Well-
the edge, it's not only the edge, it's Orly.
So significant natural resources could be the trees that are on the property.
That's not considered.
Those
oh,
are
this
not-
doesn't- This is significant. There's
Wait.
that word.
Yeah, the permanent protection of significant natural and cultural
So
resources.
I think this.
Isn't that in our CU
This
already?
need,
This is
I
like a
think this
condition-
one
this
needs
is
to
a
be spelled
conditional
out
use
more
comment.
better.
Yeah.
You want to remove it?
Well-
Or better, I would take.
I mean,
it out.
because this is one of the same ones that's in our CU.
As I say, this is just
Things
like
that always-
conditional use, it's very subjective.
And, you know, and the one thing that I've yet to find, I've asked for it a couple times but like, what are our cultural resources that are in town that are supposed to be getting protected by our zoning?
Well, there's only, for this, I think, significant, I read that as, is there something truly unique in that area that if it gets destroyed or removed is a catastrophic, unreplaceable loss? So if it's an old-growth forest, I'd say, we got to protect that grove, but none of that exists
It's not
in
there.
any of the area we're talking about. And
Now
then
that
the
we took
cultural,
Spruce Hole out of it anyway.
and, yeah, Spruce Hole,
Yeah,
in the cultural resource,
Indian land.
it's only
Graveyards.
native lands and a graveyard if they're out there, and you're not going to find that until you dig it up. The entire area is already developed and has been farmed.
No, that's true.
So I don't really see any issue with that whole thing.
Do
If
we
we
need
find
it
it,
then?
you interact with
I'm
it.
okay with it as drafted, to tell you the truth, because I
Yeah,
think
me
that
too.
it's got enough wiggle room in it.
We
It tells
know-
them, it says to them, we really care about this.
Okay.
and we know when something comes up.
It's just,
It's vague, but it's okay to be vague here, I think.
Well, and it's true, it's been farmed, and if
Yeah.
there are,
It's not gonna
in
be
that, the
in
most
there,
of that, the there might be old burial grounds from a family, you know, that lived, had a farm, that would be.
Well,
the
and
only
people
thing.
in town
Okay.
want to see that
Yeah.
listed anyway.
I think it's fine, just like it's written.
15, sustainability.
Sustainable design and construction practices and energy conservation initiatives shall be incorporated as practical.
Or-
You know, I think it's kind of wimpish.
Shall be incorporated, period.
I mean,
Shall be incorporated, period. is-
Yeah, lose the practical.
it's like, net zero should be encouraged.
And should we add that? So,
So,
at,
what do you think?
at incorporated period, and then say a net zero, design is, encouraged.
I think shall be incorporated, period, and because it's gonna be, anybody who's competent designing today is already including all these good practices, and the question is net zero the target? It'd be awesome to have it, but I'm not sure that these buildings are gonna get there. If they're UNH built,
Which is
they're gonna
why
get darn close.
I leave it as encouraged as opposed to required.
Well, they're probably gonna be encouraging it
I mean,
themselves.
it sort of signals to them that when they come up and talk to us, we're going to want to know how close they are. They, you know, if they say, hey, we are at net 5% or something like that, okay, that makes me happy. You know, it's a piece of information we'd want. If it's
And it's
not a big, if
encouraged.
you think it's going to happen anyway, okay.
Well, I don't know if it would necessarily happen anyway.
I don't think net zero is gonna happen anyways, but I think anybody building a modern building is gonna do it sustainably, as close as they can afford.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind adding. the net
16, public access.
Good to me.
zero accommodations for use of public access and street pathways. Oh, sure.
Shall be established, right?
Yeah,
That's where we left that one's
Yeah.
looking at.
Yep.
period, yeah. Lose the extent practical.
17, private covenants, boilerplate.
18.
18, right? So 18, we added 18. What was 18?
Affordable housing must be
Affordable
a
housing.
component of the project.
Right.
Yeah, affordable housing must be a component of the project.
All right, and that gets us into E. Allowed uses.
We kind of
So
went
we're
over
s-
this
We had the
last
any
time, huh?
residential use except, use
Detached,
ex-
single-family residence.
Except for
Reference
detached
to
single
ground leases in the private covenant
Oh.
says a restriction. If they're ground leasing, it probably won't be a covenant restriction and easement, they'll need ground lease controls.
Oh, so what did
Yeah, that's one, you can just,
oh,
we can talk about that, that can be a sidebar later.
Well, we,
oh, I'm looking at the issue.
On 17, formers, on 17, that was private covenants, covenants, restrictions, and easements. A lot of this is going to be ground lease, so just a technical correction, probably need to refer to ground leases
Oh,
there.
so add,
That's going to be.
ground.
control
oh, just
mechanism.
add ground,
Add
ground
ground
leases.
yeah, land leases, yeah.
All right, so for residential uses, everything except detached single families, good with that?
Yep.
All right. Non-residential uses, all right.
I don't have
So-
any changes to any of those.
Yeah, I don't have any. We
Yeah,
discussed
so there's
this
some red and
before.
blue in here, that's fine.
We included the electrical vehicle stations.
Moving on to 3, accessory uses,
Yeah, they're allowed in that are,
That's fine.
where we have,
Pretty cut and
we
dry.
have the master plan thing again. And 4, prohibited uses and design. So this one gets a little tricky, I believe.
yeah, I think it does.
So we're saying no, no A, B, or C.
I still have a problem taking drive-through facilities out of there. I think that
Well,
they're,
this is prohibited, so you're saying that now that it's been taken.
oh,
away
that's
from
right,
being
it's
prohibited,
not being prohibited,
You're
right.
okay now.
Yeah,
Yeah, so.
I was double negativing.
Yeah, you were.
Right. Storage
Correct.
facilities for the residential uses, billboard type signs, and any use likely to generate excessive whatevers, which is wording we came up with last time, I believe.
That's fine.
Maybe we need an exception for EV charging stations to the 4C.
Well, we're including it under 2M
Oh, okay.
It's up there, yeah.
specifically as an allowed.
2M,
M.
Yeah,
N, okay.
Parking
M is
Parking
a mouse.
facilities, including electric vehicle stations.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it in here, okay.
Okay, it's probably, it's, I think that might have been another
it was an addition that we had.
addition from last meeting. And,
Sorry.
yes.
What about that storage facilities for residential use? Why are you not allowing that? Gordon, you've got a whole bunch of transient people here that are
But that would
gonna
be
be
an
one
ex-
year and come back the next.
Because that would be an accessory use. If they have storage within their buildings to help with like apartment dwellers, sometimes you get a storage unit. But that's different than a storage unit like Bluebird or whatever they're called, where
Yeah.
you allow somebody to put in
A storage
a
facility.
for-profit storage facility.
You're good with the cage associated with your apartment, but not the full garage and 20 of them lined up together. That's what you're describing.
Correct.
Because they could-
Professional storage businesses.
I mean, I'm not gonna,
isn't
yeah,
it?
it's just sort of when you have people that live here till
Because we
June
don't-
and then come back in September, why
Right.
wouldn't you want a storage facility?
You know,
They're
it's-
everywhere.
it-
Well,
can
that's
find
a
spot.
company,
Which
yeah.
is why, once you get over the border in Dover, we see a whole bunch of them, right?
And a new market and then.
There's
And
one in Lee.
Because Durham doesn't allow them anywhere in the town lines, because we don't want the students using them to store all their stuff. We're an anti-student town.
It's
Well,
not
so
that. They're
Peyton,
just
would
ugly
you,
buildings.
would you
Well,
think if it was
we're
in the
an anti-ugly
basement of
building
an
town, too.
attractive building, it'd be a good use? Is kind of what,
Yeah, I mean, you could
Yeah.
imagine in a fairly large, apartment building or something, you could certainly have, storage units.
Yep, that's accessory.
Yeah.
But that's accessory to
It's
the use.
accessory to the use.
So I could imagine that, and then I could also imagine, 2 stories of a building just being storage, just for graduate students that are living in, coming back to UNH.
Well, that's where they would say, go, there's plenty around. There's one in, there's one in Epping, there's one in Lee, there's one in,
well,
and that's what
okay,
they'd say.
so are you, would
But
you,
that
if it
means
was
they
a
have a-
pretty building, would you be okay with that as a use?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem with it myself.
I mean, you're not going to even notice it, you know,
It
that
has
it
to be,
exists inside the
it
building.
has to be faux front.
You're going to have all this,
As long as it doesn't look like the.
It's sort of
yeah.
like Walnut Creek in California, they had parking garages, and they looked like a department store on the
Exactly.
outside. And then you went down this little thing, and all of a sudden you had the ramp that went all the way
Oh,
up those four stories of parking. But from the front, it looked like an old shop building. So you're right, I get it. But if we open the door for it here, you'll hear. Is that what we're saying?
is that the concern, is if you say it here, it's going to,
I mean, I don't think UNH is gonna, I don't think they're interested in building big
Yeah.
warehouses, but.
I don't
you
think
mean you
that's
could have a
probably-
high-tech research center, or you could have a storage facility.
you can have one or the other.
You're probably going to pick
I
the high
think-
tech.
I think that's why, I mean,
I'm
So,
okay.
and you're not gonna have high-value land
Yeah.
For that.
for that. It's just
Okay.
not gonna make them any money.
so the Ken had a comment that disappeared from here regarding.
Oh, rifle ranges, adult entertainment,
vape-
but I don't think.
Are
you're not-
they
CBD
going to be?
stores.
Well, that, could we exclude the rifle range under 4.8?
But, I mean, it's.
Yeah, that would be under, yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
And, you know, adult entertainment, you know, that would be excessive, I don't know, vibration or something.
Yeah.
All right.
Moving on to
Anything
F.
more? Moving on to F.
Believe
And
you said that.
looking at the clock, how are people feeling?
We're doing
I
good.
can
Let's
make
keep
it to
pushing this.
9:30
We've got
anymore.
momentum? All right.
Okay, so
So-
2, I think in 2,
Does anybody have anybody on one?
So
How do
we're
you know
on
somebody
F?
is on one?
Discussion, okay, so process. This
process.
is actually the most, establishing a PUD, okay. Constitutes an amendment to the zoning map. The process is the same
I almost
as,
need
Oh,
a
well,
flow.
that's debatable, yeah. This.
I wish this one was in a flow chart.
yeah.
That's,
Swim lanes. I see swim lanes.
Yeah, I rewrote this based on what I was hearing from the board that you didn't want to do it as a zoning amendment.
All right,
But
so,
Gary has another opinion, and that's something you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think maybe we don't need to go through this line by line so much as we need to give Michael general guidance on what the next draft should look like, and then we could deal with the whole subject maybe more expeditiously and come up with something good to discuss next time around.
I think the process is, yeah, I think it's like, what do we want the process to be?
when does the town council approve it and delegate it to the planning board to execute? That's the question, I
Well, the main
think.
question is, do you treat this as a zoning amendment and the town council ultimately does a full review of the development PUD and they adopt it as a zoning amendment? Or do you do it some other way that the council has some other kind of input, but it's the planning board that approves the development plan?
Why, I guess I'm confused. Is it all right, is it okay if we create this PUD as an amendment, as this is the amendment, or this is a zoning code, this is the PUD? And then we have a process, and part of that process is now you're going to come in, and your first, probably the first introduction would be to the planning board, who would then, almost like in a preliminary review, and then the planning board would give their thoughts, and they would come back, and then, and show us, taken into our considerations. Then it takes it to the council, and then members of the planning board, certainly the planner and your planning chair, would go to the council to answer any questions, and of course, the applicant would be there. And then the council would then have an opportunity to offer their preliminary thoughts on it. Then they could tweak that and bring that back to the council. Then the council could act on final approval, turning over now all the site review to the planning board, who would then go forward with approval.
Well, the planning board is going to do the site stuff totally on your
Yeah.
own anyway. But when they come up with this development plan, which is pretty, it's a whole package, it's gonna be very, pretty detailed.
Yeah.
But it's still concept, it's
Right.
not site plan. That's the question, and it's, gonna be maps and text and a lot of stuff. So, do we go through the regular zoning amendment process, and you review it all, you make a recommendation, then the council reviews it all in detail, maybe makes changes, maybe comes back to you, but the council does an in-depth review and debate, and ultimately they adopt that development plan. So that's one way to do it, which is often how it's done, but there was concern about that process and the council, getting into the weeds on it. Or do you want to have the planning board approves it, and the council just has some role along the way, probably non-binding, an opportunity to provide comments? Those are your two choices.
Yeah, I think that the idea that they have to present to the council, and of course it would be non-binding, but if they don't follow those, certainly the planning board would have to take in consideration what the changes that the council would want. And you have two council reps that would be insisting upon that happening at the planning board level. So it could be non-binding, but it's not really non-binding. Or, you know what I mean? If they ignored it, it would be noted and be forced upon them. So, I mean, is that all right? And that gives them plenty of, and then at some point, then the planning board approves it, knowing we have these strict guidelines, and we are, we certainly could be reviewing with the council at any point should they be curious about how it's going on. You certainly have two members of the council that will be reporting back, and that's the whole idea, that they should be hearing how it's going.
Well, that's kind of what I heard at the last meeting. That's the way I wrote this up.
Yeah.
But there's other opinions that it should be, council should
I'm of
adopt
the
it.
other opinion.
The zoning, you like it with the zone, as a zoning amendment?
Yeah, I think that right now, I think we're drifting into, we envision the edge, and we're talking about the edge. And
Well, in that, we're talking about that area of land and.
we're talking about,
Yeah.
I've heard, from what I understand, we're not restricting the enabling zoning ordinance just to the edge area, but rather are including orally and most of the
Udor.
the acronym of the other
Which is-
districts.
Which is that area that is.
Yeah, but with some exclusion. So to me, it's as simple as this. It's possible we could get an extremely, it's not legally certain that UNH will continue to own everything that it owns now. We rely on kind of this idea we have of what UNH is going to be like to deal with and what they want to do and so forth. It could be extremely important to the character of the town. It could be a very large area, much larger than the edge. It could, and I just think that a decision like that must be made by elected officials and not officials appointed by the town council. So that's a pretty simple
Well, yeah.
summary of my position.
I
Yeah,
guess that,
Can I just,
yeah.
I know,
I think we have a hard time
I think,
getting the piece of paper in front of us through town council if
Without a plan.
town council didn't actually get a vote on it.
so it seems like if you sort of modify
I mean,
both those,
From the idea of having a streamlined, non-discretionary type process, yeah, I kind of like just getting input from the town council at the beginning, but I'm not sure politically it's going to fly.
all right, so
Yeah, what was Heather going to say?
So it just, so when we, what I was saying is that they should have, if it's a large land lot, and we want, and that's going to be something that, again, is being developed over a process of time, it makes sense that the town council would have have approval of the fact that, yes, we agree that this land use, which is significant, and at this, that it be approved, that the town council says, go ahead and proceed at preliminary review.
Right.
If they approve it, they don't care what the layout's going to look out, but at preliminary review, they don't care if building B is here and A is here and whatever, but the concept, the use of that land should be clear enough at preliminary review for them to get there and say, yes, we approve of the continuation of this project. That, to me, is the place to put it. It allows for approval of significant land use, and then leaves them out of the weeds to decide if the street's going to go like this
Yeah,
or
they
it's going to
can't
go
be-
like that, and
Yeah.
leave the rest of it after the preliminary review, when they're starting to do more work on it. That's when we pick it up and we're finishing it off.
Yeah.
They still have to meet the core, the core scope of what that project was going to look like on a broad stroke at preliminary review.
Yeah.
That's
So,
my
Heather, what I'm
idea.
hearing you saying then is you're going a step beyond, what I wrote, which would be that there's a preliminary thing they submit, and that goes to the council, and the council actually has to approve that preliminary
Right.
plan, and then they finish up with the planning board to finalize their development plan, but it has to be reasonably consistent
With the
with
original.
what the council preliminary, but then the planning board they'll spend another 2 months on it, and the planning board will approve it, but it has to be consistent with the intent of the preliminary that the council approved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That to
another
me is a
approach.
good balance between the two.
Yeah.
But because, my concern was they're looking at it, and then at the very end, after whatever company has spent, $200,000 on all of the package, that you go back to the town council and they don't like the bump over here, and that's where we want to get away from.
I think that really we're talking about almost exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I see it is that what you're calling preliminary, I would call the approval of the master plan.
Well,
And
yeah.
it would be approved,
But it couldn't be.
But the enabling ordinance could allow the planning board to tweak that without affecting the fact that the town council had legally approved that master plan. It's just a question of how specific is the master plan.
I think we're
required
getting
to be.
I think we're getting caught up in semantics, because what I'm saying is that, what I'm hearing you say is that, well, what Heather's saying and what I was saying too is, for the most part, is that they see a preliminary plan, and they say, yes, we like the way this looks, this lays out good, this is a good use of our land. Now, planning board, now, this is fine for them to now go forward with the formal site plan, which we are, that the council is not equipped to do a site plan review.
No,
The planning
we would
board.
always do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would do
Yeah,
that
and I
anyway.
would
We do
say-
that, but then, but they've already gone with their preliminary review. The council has had opportunity to make binding choices about it. And then the rest of it is up to us.
Okay, so-
Yeah,
yeah, so-
and we want to use that, we don't want to use that word master plan, because that gets caught up with the town's master plan, so
Yeah,
it would
it's
be
development plan.
The development
PUD
plan.
applicants,
Yeah.
PUD applicants are extremely
Yeah.
interested in making the plan as flexible for themselves
Right.
as they can get away with.
Right.
So the magic here will be the negotiation to cause it to be flexible enough so that the town can approve it without a risk of getting caught up in the weeds of what should be done by the
Right.
town staff and the planning board. But I think that is best dealt with by just providing guidance to Michael and saying, make sure that this is something that can be approved by the town council without getting pulled back into the weeds on every little issue that affects because really it should be broad brush. It should say, when you look at these PUDs, they're pretty broad brush. They have broad discretion. They'll have transects, say, if let's say you want to protect the view of a forest, they may put a transect there that says, we're not going to go too high here. Just to give you that protection. But the way they write these applications, they're going to get as much flexibility from the town council as Michael will let them.
So I think you've arrived at something. I think this is a good compromise. Let me just recap what I'm hearing. Is they meet with staff. We just have general, and then they come to the planning board, and they have to have a preliminary step. So it's there's two. So this PUD development plan. There's actually two steps. They have to present a preliminary application, and it's not super fleshed out. They may not have the number of units. They may not even know the number of stories. It's fluid, but it still gives everyone a pretty good idea of what they're talking about. Say they come to one or more meetings of the planning board, you talk to them about the preliminary plan, you express concerns, and then they can revise it if they want, or then they go, if you're comfortable with it, then they go to the council. And it's a PUD, but it's less than a full PUD. And the council actually has to vote to approve that preliminary PUD. And so the council sees text, they see maps, but they don't have a lot of the details that you're going to get in the final PUD. And the council reviews it, they take as long as they want, they have a public hearing if they want, and the council actually votes to approve the preliminary plan. And the council can also include any conditions they want. Say when they come to preliminary plan, they say, we don't know what our height limits are. And we'll flesh that out in our final PUD plan. They then go to the council. They say, well, we don't know what our height limit is. The council, as part of a preliminary approval, can say, well,
This is your height
there's a
limit.
maximum of 6 stories.
Right, yeah.
Anything, the council approves the preliminary plan, and they incorporate any conditions they want that are binding.
Right.
And then it comes back to the planning board, and you have a good amount of discretion to approve the final PUD development plan, as long as in good faith it's consistent with the conditions and the thrust of the preliminary plan.
And then this ordinance can then explicitly, because that's an amendment to the zoning law, so we went over.
Well,
this.
no, it wouldn't be an amendment to zoning, it would just be an approved PUD, but that's the
Right,
process.
but anyway, they can so the public will know what's going on. You can put enabling language that says that in the process, and then the public, when they show up at the town council meeting, can look at it and say, well, I'm comfortable with that. Or the public can say, we really don't want the planning board to make that decision. We really want a height limit. They can make that public comment, and then the interest of the public and, having their elected officials be responsive and making such a major decision are appropriately addressed.
And then we flesh out.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's
And then we-
pretty innovative.
Yeah,
I
but
think
then
that's a good approach.
I think actually it's following, I don't really see it as that innovative. I think it's following the process that we already have with the site plan application now. It's just adding one step in by a presentation to the council and getting I think the binding comments from the council about it. And then if, in the site plan review, if there is a substantive change that the planning board deems a little bit too far off, then they would have to take it back to the council. So they probably would try to stay as close.
But I mean, I think this is less cumbersome than a zoning amendment, but,
Yeah.
the developer will need to understand that your PUD process, there's 2 steps. You've got to do a preliminary and you're doing a final, which isn't a big deal, but the advantage of that is, you're getting your okay from the council early.
Look, before we recommend this to the council for approval, we think it's too specific. We think it's not specific enough.
You need to do this, and this.
Because you could speak a little bit for the council.
So
Well-
on page 9, the changes to the PUD, it's been approved, the world's going to change, and markets are going to change, and the changes to the PUD are where the delegated authority is, if you define what a minor modification is, or significant change, if you define those, and you have two council members sitting at the planning board voting on it, it should be easy enough to make all the tweaks to an empowered planning board and the planning board works in concert with the town council in this town. It's not like this notion of a rogue planning board that's gonna go.
No.
If the town council says, do this, that's gonna carry a ton of weight at the planning board. Especially, there's gonna be two specific votes, and there's the moral authority of the town council saying, that's not the direction we wanna go.
Right.
And if one of the binding requirements from the town council ends up being a big issue, they have to go back to the town council for.
I agree with that. I don't think this, you can just say.
Right.
Well, you have to go back to the council if you want to.
So the point I'm getting to is that in under 10, the changes to the PUD, everything there is somehow being handled by the planning board, but that would be a D that needs to go back to the town council.
Any substantive changes that veer from the approved preliminary would need reapproval of.
We should define what that is.
That are
Is it
inconsistent with.
Yeah.
Something like that, that kind of
A
language.
number of
Yeah,
dwelling
yeah.
units?
Because they'd
Because
have
to
to
me,
go
some of that stuff wouldn't be.
I agree. So
Well, some of that stuff wouldn't be.
I know we have to
but-
get to that
The
page, maybe we
IGB,
should
we
keep
could-
going
we
again,
could-
well,
but
given that we've reworked the process, so that
that gets us
was
there.
F. So that discussion was F, right?
Yeah.
Are we done with process?
What
That-
about the regional, where does regional impact hit? Does that hit at all?
Actually, this is,
Can that put the brakes on it?
No, don't worry about that.
it's
Famous word.
The development,
Is that
Not-
DOT?
not
not
like
significantly.
Yeah.
Don't
it's
worry
not,
about it. It's going to be a development of regional impact, and that's not a.
but it's not going to stop.
And it's primarily going to be due to traffic in Lee, in and out of Lee,
Yeah.
right? Because you're going to have, people are going to be getting off the Lee exit ramp and coming in back way and stuff like that, or up 152. And that would cause, so Lee would have a say in there of something. They might decide not, we don't care.
Well,
Didn't they
there,
think about putting a roundabout right there at the Mass Road area? No?
on Main Street at the Mass.
At Main, yeah,
Main and
they
Mass
are.
Road?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at that.
yeah, because that would significantly
be two-
improve the
circles.
traffic backup that way
Yeah.
to start with. Anyway.
We're
It
gonna
would,
have
it
so
would
many
really
bikes
mess up
we don't need.
the big football games
Yeah,
at
give me a
homecoming.
break.
No, but I think 10 and 11, we need to talk more about on page 9. We need to be more clear about changes.
Yeah, so with the changes, so we're saying, right, so 10 is still, we need to better identify what a minor and a significant change is, I think.
But it's a significant change, that would need to be approved by the town council, right?
Yeah,
No,
yeah. Well,
No, well,
if it,
that's why we need to define the categories, right? Anything that specifically goes against what the
Yeah,
Council
that-
town
approved.
council
Yeah.
requested, I consider that
Yeah, for
a
sure.
specific higher category than a significant change.
Right.
Like a
Right.
new
That-
use.
right.
A new use would be like, maybe.
Or, well, no, if anything where the town council said, this is something we specifically are adding that wasn't in the preliminary plan when it came to us,
Yeah.
that would have to go back to the town council for approval, all right? If they're playing within those games, but they significantly rearranged a few things, that might be a significant change in the layout of the buildings, perhaps. That
that's not a big
could be
deal.
handled by a CU.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Okay, because it's not really changing what the concept that was approved by the town council. And minor modifications would be, but that's just
Fine.
where we need a better understanding for both us and the applicant, what's minor, what's significant.
Let me make a suggestion, if I may. I don't think there's any cure for the disease, that it's problematic to put something like minor or not material or any of that kind of vague stuff. This will come down to whether the plan, and these are going to be very good people drafting, putting together this master plan. This ordinance will give them the guidance they need to prepare something that's flexible. The way we're conceptualizing it, they'll know. You're not going to have to explain it to them when they see this. They're going to say that their whole goal is to get as much flexibility as they can. So we can just say here, right, the plan in a way that is what a PUD should be,
So that they don't make.
flexible
changes,
and incorporating a lot of different options that are to be approved subsequently by the planning board.
Okay.
So you could say, if I'm hearing you, Gary, then there's a minor modification doesn't mean, it's not that's not a thing. It's either consistent or it's not.
It's either consistent with the
and if it's
express
not
terms.
consistent,
Yeah.
it has to get approval from the council.
Yeah. And then you could put in a de minimis exception. There is that. You could say, you put a proviso, provided, however, that the planning board may approve de minimis changes. That's just a legal term that means that no one in their right mind could possibly care about them.
All right, so there's two different, I want to just bring this up, make sure everybody's on the same page. There's changes that they might make during our initial work when they're still trying to get their first final approval. And then there's changes that might come back 2 years later after they're halfway developed and something else needs to be done.
Yeah.
And
10 is post-approval.
Yeah, so before it's approved, if they want to change something the council specified, they have to go back to the council. So that's pretty straightforward. But once the PUD is approved, and then they're coming in with their site plan, and it's a little different from the approved PUD.
It's not a concern, but it's that the town council is going to see it a bit early. So it's going to be non-formed clay.
Yeah. Well,
So
a little more.
A little bit, there's going to be structure there, but it's
pre-fired clay.
And now
it's pre-fired,
now it's going
yeah.
to come down, and then there's going to be the actual implementation. And so I guess when I looked at the language changes to the PUD, it's more that's going to be the actual implementation cycle. When that starts coming back to us is going to be the implementation. So it's not like, I guess I could read that, it's not like changes to the PUD, it's actually the implementation. It's now the actual definition of the PUD that's outside of some fairly ambiguous state that the town council saw it in. So that's kind of a little difficult to understand when it does hit the threshold where it needs to go back, and you don't want to introduce risk there.
Yeah, so it would be the kind of thing like, say they're approved for a total of, 500 dwelling units. And, you put in the approval, 1/3 of them have to be studio and 1/3 have to be one bedroom or something. Then they come back with a site plan, they say, you know what, we don't want to do we can't do studio units. That's inconsistent. Is that something that it's sort of a change? Can you approve that and say, okay, we're comfortable. That's a change, but we're going to have a public hearing and approve it? Or do they go to the council? That's the kind of thing you're going to experience.
So would we want to recommend up to the council that these might be some things that you would additionally include coming back down to us, or is it just the town council will make that assessment themselves to create those guardrails about what's going to be allowed?
Well, you're the one who are really defining it with your final approval. The council is looking at that half-fired clay, and they're saying, yeah, we like the basic thing, and these are some requirements we're imposing. And then you're finalizing it consistent with the spirit of the council.
So it comes back down, the council's approved it, it comes back down to us, that it gets now shaped into something that has a lot of
Into the
definition.
final approved PUD.
We hold a normal process where there's public comment and
Yeah.
input on that.
And then you approve it,
And
and
then we-
then you get a site plan 6
Right.
months later.
Okay.
And maybe in the approval by the town council, we say, you're approving this. Apartments, if you go over 500, we want to know about it, but we said 500, but we don't really want to talk to you about it again unless it's 600. So there's
Yeah.
a little bit of
Some plus or
room.
minuses in
The
there.
plus or minus is there. And then they say this is, and it's part of the consistency thing. Everything is consistent, but man, we really want to talk to you if you start getting to these circuit breakers.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that the council will define in their preliminary approval, and you will definitely define in your approval, those parameters.
If we think that there's resistance to delegating the authority, maybe we provide them with those circuit breakers and say,
We might want to provide the town council with some suggestions of what would trigger, like, if we're talking about 500 units, plus or minus what? Plus or minus 10%. If it changes, if the numbers diverges by more than 10% one way or the other, or only in one direction, then it needs to come back to them, type deal. That might provide the guidance we need to make those calls so that we're not, from both sides of the table, we're not playing the game of, I don't think this has to go back to the town council.
Right.
We think it does.
The problem is it's kind of a slippery slope. If those things become explicit, then the applicant's really getting 600 units. So at some point, you've got to draw the line and just let things fall out. Then the key is just making sure that you're negotiating for what you really care about and what you think the public should really care about. That's what's in the thing.
But if I'm approving 500, is that 500 minimum or 500 maximum?
Oh, man, it would be
At
maximum.
maximum.
Yeah.
but
And
you're
then just-
also, I'm not,
But I might also have a minimum, right? I
Just
might-
make sure that's explicit in the plan. That's just whether the
Yeah,
plan's
I mean-
well
Just-
done.
Any
know.
specifics would have to be clear.
And then just one more thought, it's quite possible that as that evolves, as this takes place, that very few of us will be at the table when there's some significant change that's brought forward. It could be a completely different set of people that are then evaluating
Maybe,
that.
but there'll be continuity with those.
And then, so I guess you just want to make sure that to the applicant's point, just to make sure that's a fair process that they're engaged with, that a new planning board doesn't.
With as UNA. I mean, we can, there'll be a process and it works just as well. I mean, that if the city council is less comfortable, they can get more specific. Right?
Oh, they will. A council
Well, I
member's not
think you
comfortable
did-
with
One thing that's
something.
UNA.
Is this doable to draw this up the way that?
Oh, yeah. No, I
Heather's-
think you finished up through F, but we need to talk more about changes and refine that business.
Yeah.
But I think you finished F otherwise.
All right,
Yeah,
so
but-
G is short, criteria for review.
Another thing you could add under G is, which is sort of implied, but that it also must demonstrate a benefit to the community, or a net benefit to the community, or a
Well-
significant benefit.
Well.
Except that, all right, we're at this point
Where we
now,
get into
G,
the
right, we've already come through,
A preliminary review.
so maybe we put the town council back in now, because they're giving that approval?
No, this is the final one that your planning
be
board
the end.
This is why a flow chart would be
unilaterally
nice.
deciding this.
This is after the formal site plan evaluation.
No, this is after the council has approved the preliminary. They've come back to you for another couple of months. They finalized their development plan, and now you're here
Okay.
debating, are we approving this or not?
Oh, okay.
these are the big qualitative questions about did we achieve our
Yeah.
intent and goals and aims? And they're soft questions, and they're the questions that say, no, I'm voting no on this, even though we've done a ton, because it's not consistent with like our,
And you could do that. You might
Or
be
it
Is
is
there.
that why you're saying, oh, it doesn't provide enough value to Durham?
Oh, wait, no, actually, that's in there, number 2, already. It says significant positive benefit to Durham.
A significant positive benefit. That's one place I would leave the extra flamboyant adjective.
And you're going to have a vote. They'll be through 9 months, or whatever it is, 9 months, and it comes down, and you're now voting on it, and you're looking at these. Yeah.
All of
that's
them.
Yes,
exactly right.
yes.
I was
yes.
going to
You're
say, I
gonna
mean, number,
approve it at this point.
number
All right.
3, G3. I mean, we should have found that out in the preliminary.
Yeah.
So I'm a little
I don't know that you
concerned
want to
with,
keep that. I don't know you
Yeah,
wanna keep
that
3.
should have been obvious, that should have been obvious a long time ago.
because if we can't,
I mean, maybe 3's not relevant.
it
Here.
shouldn't be at this point in
That
the
was sort of-
process.
Sort of where I was getting is if,
That should be in the preliminary review.
because
Yeah.
if 3 was a problem, the town council should never have sent it to us in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, do you, maybe 3 should actually then go under, D. That should be a standard of development then. You
Yeah.
look at the master plan.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it's an awfully big master plan.
Oh, well,
And
that's
it's going to
Sometimes
be
it says two totally
outdated.
different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Because the whole
yeah.
idea about of the PUD though is that it's,
It's a little
It's
because
innovative.
different.
it's innovative and the master plan isn't.
Yeah, so
And
do you want to keep
I
3
would just
somewhere
leave
or
it,
not?
I would just leave it out, just leave it.
Just delete 3.
Yeah, because
Okay.
there'll be
Yeah.
things that the council is going to look at, and even us as a planning board will look at, and that will be important, but the council will know what's important to them.
So there's a
The
concept that,
important thing with regards to number 3 is that what we're approving here is consistent with the master plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So do you want to, but you don't need to include that language like under.
No, because it's not
objectives?
them, it's not that application that's being consistent, it's the rules that we created
Oh,
that the
right.
application is
It's
following.
the
that
ordinance.
You mean
is
this
consistent.
ordinance?
It's the
This
ordinance.
ordinance here
Yeah,
is
right,
what
right,
needs to be consistent
exactly.
with the master plan.
right, I found a model ordinance that was being done in Georgetown, Texas, a kind of suburban Austin, and I had some language I stuck in just for discussion purposes and what I provided Michael, but the way they handled it was kind of elegant. What they did, they said, okay, let's get the town council focused on what they should be looking at, and they said the town council has to make a legal finding of 5 things. And those things were an orderly and creative arrangement of all land uses with respect to each other. We could put the master plan in here too, consistent with the master plan. You could put, in other words, specific findings. This one had, had cultural, recreational, comprehensive transportation, location to take advantage of the environment, and staging of the development in a manner that is not burdensome to the community. And so they had just kind of a little roadmap of that focused the decision maker on the big picture in the form of findings. I just mentioned that in passing.
Well, they actually, you would be reviewing D. You would probably go through each of these things. You would have already done it.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you'd say, are they meeting?
I'm just saying, those things could be just kind of recast as a finding by the town council and then have a focusing effect so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. That's all I'm saying, just a kind of a technical thing.
At the preliminary.
Oh, are you
stage.
saying that before we would submit it up to the town council, they've kind of checked them?
And it tells it also will focus the public debate.
Well,
And this is a preliminary
the 5
review.
criteria?
The
In
5
the
big
preliminary,
things.
yeah.
Right.
Whatever
That's
we
what
think
we
the
gotta
5 big things are, is
give
what
the
I'm saying, is it's an elegant way to do it, is saying, well, these are the findings you have to make to pass the ordinance according to the enabling ordinance. The town council, you have
You
to
don't have to
find
say-
A, B, C, and D, and E. That way, you have kind of this short, big picture checklist that will focus the public's attention. They won't get lost in the shuffle so much, I think.
well, it could focus the council on certain specifics that they should be
It would help keep the council from
on
being
track.
diverted.
Yeah. They may still get diverted, but,
It's an interesting idea because then it kind of contains, it sort of scopes it to a certain group. It doesn't eliminate other things, but it just sort of
It
provides some
focuses.
Well, it
structure.
encourages them to look at the big picture with respect to the big things. Is it consistent with the master plan? These are what you have to find. Now, if, let's say, you didn't have a hard requirement, but you had, we encourage this and we encourage that back there on the objectives, and they're gonna say, well, we can make this finding even though there's not a bike rack, or whatever it is.
Stop.
Anything but that. Anything.
bike racks.
I love bike racks.
You know, you're gonna get one no here.
So Michael, G is the criteria for the town council approval.
No, I mean, I see this as the criteria for you in your final vote.
And after they've seen the council.
Now, if you want to
Town
spell it out
council,
more.
We don't have criteria for the town council yet. That's something that maybe we need to work on next meeting.
Yeah, I would say so.
But I think that's what I'm hearing is
Should
that
be the
your,
same
your
criteria,
proposal there
really.
would almost stub in G.
Little higher
That
level,
would be-
maybe.
Your language there would kind of fit G.
Yeah, those two things can just be pulled together into a single
I
thing.
think, right, this criteria here in G has been generalized to us, keeping in mind that we've been thinking about everything that's in D. I think for the town council, we might want to be pulling some of the things that are in D as saying, look at these, this is what, you know, these are important things for you to be considering during this approval.
Yeah. Can we do that next meeting?
Yeah.
Are we,
Can
Yes.
we look at that language from that?
Because at this
Yeah,
point,
Michael, can you-
what we are,
He'll
no,
incorporate
I'm not, here, we are so close to the end that if we can get through, I think
You're up
we're
to
done with
H.
G.
Yeah.
And if we can do H and
Okay,
I
correct.
real quickly, then we can have a whole new document next time. That
Okay.
we've at least
It would almost
reviewed
be like a
once.
rough draft ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
all right.
So submission requirements. Information about the existing parcel and proposed project. This is a current conditions checklist.
Yes.
The list is not current conditions.
It's
It
developed.
starts as current,
conditions.
it's project, it's development plan conditions.
Well, it
So we
is
got,
It says both.
well,
proposed project.
they're mixed together. They need to be separated out because number 6 is supposed to have the proposed development plan stuff. So, so the stuff in red at the time that was written is saying, hey, starting with J and going down, but now it's K and going down.
They need to
That
be
all
divided
belongs
out.
to number 6.
They all need to be divided out.
And-
Totally, Paul, totally agree. Think we could also add an additional number with a cross reference to to the stuff that we had before. This was the point I had before on
Yeah.
there was a lot of overlap between those things. Just
Yeah.
isolate current conditions, like you say, and then add another item, cross-reference, showing how, a narrative explaining how the project meets all of the general standards
Right,
and objectives of
but
the project.
that's already there. It's just in general terms, not the specific.
Yeah, but we
Right.
have much more explicit back in, not basic requirements.
Right, because what you do is you take half of those things in D and you make an architectural plan, which is what the first thing in B is, right? And your whole plan for streets and paths and general landscaping and stuff is 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, but what do we want, I guess what we're
So,
asking ourselves, what do we want to see when they
What
come
I'm,
to
and
us?
what I'm saying is it's already here.
Yeah,
I don't think anything's missing.
yeah.
So we can just
I do
leave
think
this.
you're
You can
right,
double
though,
check,
we
but I
should-
don't
we-
think
I think
anything's missing.
I think we should we should just make sure we have one place where they talk about existing conditions. And one place in the document where we talk
Proposed,
about.
yeah, to separate them out.
All right.
'Cause it's
and then we have
confusing
7, 8,
otherwise.
9, because you see number 8's the natural and cultural resources analysis,
Where are you? I'm trying to, are you?
page 12.
Okay, you skipped. Okay,
I mean, we're going through 5, 6.
so basically that whole 5 and 6 needs to be completely rejiggered.
They need to be
Cut in half.
Divided out.
reviewed and properly sorted is what
Sorted
they need to
properly.
be. They need to be properly sorted.
And be in
Right.
2 separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now, where did this 300-foot thing for a butters
Oh,
come
well,
from?
that's what we use for conditional use notices. So it seems that we definitely want to.
So does this need to be changed because of the change in RSA's last year?
No, because this is more than that. So if you agree that you should notify more than just direct
Well,
abutters.
the thing is the RSA last year changed what an abutters list is.
I wouldn't change
Yeah, but
it.
it's still,
They have a
it's still
specific abutters
direct.
list for PUDs, I think, don't they?
No,
No.
no.
This is, the state has an abutters list for an application. And it's very specific and it's limited to 50 feet.
So this this would encompass that because it's 300 feet.
But why?
No,
Well-
Yeah, but
no,
when I say-
because the state says you can't, not to go
over.
beyond that.
No,
No,
They're
they're
state
saying-
says at a minimum, that's what you have to do.
I don't think
It
so.
was the reverse.
Because-
It was the, I think. it was
Pretty
the
sure.
Here,
reverse.
for notification purposes, per RSA 672.3, abutters a property owner whose land is adjoins or is directly across the street or stream. That's it. And then it has some cockamamie description of what they mean that nobody understands. You know, about directly drawing some perpendicular lines all over the place. Anyway, but it's basically, it's a direct abutter across the street or stream. So, so for a PUD, we're saying it's more than that. It's within 300 feet.
And this is just those that would be notified by mail.
Yeah,
Of 300 feet is fine, in my opinion.
that's what it is for conditional use.
Because because it won't
okay.
matter when it comes to public hearing, anybody
all
in
gonna be
town.
here.
Yeah.
It's going to be the least secret project.
Yeah, they're all going to be here anyway.
Yeah, there are no secret projects in Durham.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just, it's nice to know that it was tied to the CU, which I
Yeah, I
forgot
mean, that's where the
about
number
Yeah.
came from, yeah.
Okay, so that's
Okay, that
fine.
makes it more logical.
So you're on to I.
We're going to change the word master into development
development,
plan
yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah,
I don't
just
have any other changes
lose
on
the
that.
word master for
And the
the
rest of
whole
us is
thing.
saying the planning board's going to do its job, right?
Yes.
Yeah, some of this may be redundant, but, you know, I'll look at that some more. in
Yeah.
I.
The one, I think the one language, the paragraph that says, the planning board may allow for departures from the approved PUD, is that still
Yeah.
in there? That's going to have to go.
Yeah,
That's going to be inconsistent with the
Yeah,
changes.
they won't be able to, yeah. To some
yeah,
extent.
yeah, so, right, we want to deal with the changes. and-
Tweak that a
Well,
little bit.
yeah, this may be redundant, so we'll have to
Well,
look at it
yeah,
some more.
also, it's going to be, this conflicts with the concept
Right.
of inconsistency.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's everything. I'll just rewrite this as best I can from your discussion.
Man,
All right.
You guys are like, you guys are one heroic planning board.
Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It was kind of surprising, I think is the, I know, I was not expecting to get that far. So, thank you, everybody, great job.
It was,
We
the other
have
stuff was fast.
minutes for January 8th and January 22nd.
I read the minutes for January 8th and have no changes.
I had no problem with either of them.
Actually, I have one change on, there's one just misspelling on page 3. The word affluent disposal should be effluent, but it's just a minor editorial thing. Page 3, line 38.
38. Where we don't dispose of affluent people, we get rid of the effluent of
I don't know.
Some
coming
people-
out of the pipe. All
Starting to think about that.
Doesn't stink,
Yeah, we
but never
don't,
heard of it.
right,
We're not
I move
doing
we
that.
accept the minutes of January 8th.
I second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, what about January 22nd?
I don't have any changes to that one either.
Okay.
Move that we accept the minutes January 22nd.